Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday, July 18th meeting of the San Francisco Commission of Animal Control and Welfare. Secretary, would you please take the roll call, please?
Yes, this is Commissioner Nina Ilani. Anna Forte.
Present.
Rachel Reese.
Present.
Sherry O'Neill.
Here.
Bunny Rosenberg.
Present.
Russell Snosky.
Present.
Shane Tobin.
Present.
Lisa Wayne. Brian Crockett. Brian Benhorn.
Present.
Thank you. General public comment. Members of the public may address the Commission with comments or recommendations on items within the Commission's jurisdiction, other than items on the agenda at the beginning or the end of the meeting, but not both. I would like to say I apologize. I ran out of toner and the agendas were not printed. I'm very sorry about that. But I will say what's on the agenda. New business is a San Francisco dog licensing discussion. Old business includes the SFSPCA, SFACC feral cat program changes. Our second old business item is revision to San Francisco's pet tethering ordinance. And finally, a commission technology update is for old business. So those are our agenda items. If you have a comment on something other than that, please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you very much for this meeting. I spoke to Dr. O'Neill earlier. I called Animal Care Control today about an injured baby finch today. And if I had been your regular member of the public, I would have done what he said and just released this bird. But I knew better. The bird, you could pick up this bird, reach down and pick up this bird. He's very fluffed up. So I would like to see more education at Animal Care Control on what to do about birds and not just tell the public to release a bird. I mean, when the person came out to pick up the bird had settled down enough and we could see that it had an injured wing and was bleeding, so this bird is definitely injured and definitely needs some help. So,
I'm sorry, can you repeat your name?
Linda.
Linda.
Yeah, good G.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other further public comment?
Good evening. My name is Julie Johnson. I'm a former commissioner, and I went to the website to try to find meeting minutes and agendas and audio of the meetings that we used to do back in over 2 years ago. I couldn't find any. I was a little bit disturbed by that. The way that I see it as a member of the public is if there's no minutes and no recording, there's no meeting for the public to understand what the commission's doing. So it's possible that I didn't find the right place, but I searched for over 15 minutes to try to find the agendas, minutes, and audio. Thank you.
Thank you. That does go to our technology update. It is an agenda item, so we will be getting to that. We have been working on these issues. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Is there any other further public comment at this time?
Can we comment now on the ACC issues, or do we wait?
We'll get to that. Thank you. Item number 3, approval of the draft minutes of the June 2019 meeting. Thank you very much, Nina, for making those very concise and easy to follow minutes of the meeting, which was a long one with a lot of speakers. I did not have any corrections or notes. I'll just double check. Did anyone else have any corrections? Oh, I did have one thing I wanted to point out. When Dr. Cynthia Karsten spoke, the minutes suggest that this change in feral cat program and the kitty nursery, the way I interpret the minutes is that it was her sort of idea to proceed with this, and from speaking to her, she wanted to make it clear that it was not her, she was not driving this change. And maybe I just read it too quickly, but I would like the minutes to reflect that Dr. Karsten was not the driver of this initiative. Did anyone else notice that? Or anyway, if you have a moment, if you could just look at that and make sure that that's very clear.
Okay, I will do that before I finalize the draft.
Great, thank you. Were there any other comments? Questions? Shall we make a movement to approve the minutes with the change or clarification noted?
A motion to approve?
All in favor?
Aye.
No dissenting, so we will approve those draft minutes. Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on those minutes? Moving on to chairpersons and commissioners' report. This is commissioners' reports regarding recent activities in the community involving animal issues that have been discussed by the commission in the past. I have a couple of things I wanted to say. First of all, I spoke to the Rules Committee. We have some vacancies on our, we don't have vacancies, we have some expired terms on our commission. When I spoke to the supervisor's office with the Rules Committee, I was told that the Board of Supervisors are very busy with ballot initiatives coming up for the fall elections, and so all of these committees, assignments, and appointments and whatnot have been put to the back burner presumably until after November. I find that hard to believe, but I will continue to check in with them. So for our commissioners whose terms have officially expired, we thank you for your continued service, and if when I have updates on that, I will let you know. The other update I wanted to point out to everyone is, I don't know if anyone still gets the hard copy of the San Francisco Chronicle, but I do. And the reason I do is because sometimes some of the things that you will see in the print item might be overlooked on the online version. But here, on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle, this was today, right? Yeah, this was today. There is a furrier down here, and a story about how this, I don't think it's him, I think it's a guy in LA, but the pending, well, it hasn't passed. The legislation to ban fur sales in California has not yet passed, but to read this, it's a done deal, according to the Chronicle. And so these businesses that restore and make and store whatever furs are having to obviously find other things to do. One of the men who was previously, I think he was in San Francisco, and he's relocated to Dallas, and the guy who's been in business for like 40 years in Beverly Hills has to retire. But anyway, I thought this was encouraging because this is something that, you know, it didn't start with San Francisco, right, Russell? But anyway, we were proponents of this ban. So that was an update. Those are all the updates that I have. Does anyone else have anything that we've talked about in the past? Give us a brief update.
I have a brief update. So me and Nina met and we were speaking about how there's been an ongoing issue with who is our liaison with the city, who do we actually talk to when we have issues such as getting stuff on our website and any technical issues, and just who are we supposed to speak with. So me and Nina wrote this letter that you all have, and it's to the city administrator's office. I can read it real quick if you'd like.
Would you?
Yes, so Dear Administrator Kelly, we are writing to you as commissioners on the Commission of Animal Control and Welfare with the inquiry regarding who the commission's city liaison / representative would be at the city administrator's office. We have ongoing support needs pertaining to managing and operating our commission and require an administrator to enable us to accomplish our commission duties. For example, currently we require assistance with managing our commission website, discussing possible funding to support our commission work, and understanding the procedure for revising our commission's mission as set forth in the city charter. We appreciate being informed as to who the best point of contact at the city would be when issues such as these arise. Thank you for your attention and consideration. Respectfully, San Francisco Animal Control and Welfare Commissioners. So we would like to, you know, we can talk about edits, and we could put a small little group of 3 of us or under 3 of us to work on this. But we would like to start the process of, you know, notifying them that we actually don't have a liaison, and we're thinking about CCing the Board of Supervisors, especially the Rules Committee, and just letting them know that this is a big need for our commission. And we wanted to see what the rest of the commission thinks.
I will start with, this was not an agenda item. This was, this sort of falls into our technology update and our little black hole that we find ourselves in. So I don't want to have too much of a conversation since it's not an agenda item, but I think that draft is a great start. One thing I would add is we may want to, possible funding might be a bit strongly worded. I think that'll be just maybe complete. So we could keep the wording of possible funding, But it might be a turnoff and might dismiss the entire letter and initiative. Or we could say questions of, for example, reimbursement expenses. As we have found out, sometimes we have the printer at someone's house doesn't work and we have to go to Kinko's, and that's a considerable expense. It's very possible that the Board of Supervisors and the City Administrator will say that that's just too bad, it's your own problem. Or that there's a facility here that we could use, which gets, we'll talk about that in the, what we found out about the technology issue. But I think we should consider changing that wording, but I'll defer to you. And I think this is a great start, and I would suggest, since we can't have too much of a discussion, but if you have something to say, you can, but I suggest we say what we want to say, and then we go ahead and we send it to the, yes.
This is technically past business, because we've been talking about this for
We have been talking about this, yes, yes, and I apologize, I don't know if you, I don't think anyone requested it was on the agenda. If they did, I apologize if I missed that, but yes, it needs to happen. So it would be to the City Administrator and to the Board of Supervisors. And I would also CC the clerk on the Board of Supervisors, because it was thanks to him, Victor Young. He sort of walked me through what the entire problem was in going through our charter. And we might want to, I don't have it in front of me, but I know the place in the charter that talks about the formation of our commission.
That was added.
Yeah, I think that should be added. Anyone want to add anything?
I might recommend you just replace funding with resources, because some of the things that we've discussed actually spending money on might be things that we can get directly from the city. So
Right.
they might scowl at that a little less.
Right. There's a copy machine somewhere we could do that sort of thing, yeah.
Thank you for working on that.
Yes, thank you very much. Did anyone else want to add to that? It's not an action item, so we can't, I don't think we should vote on it now, but what I suggest we do is if you would revise it, and then if you could send it out to the rest of us. We probably need an approval. Should we postpone it to the next meeting? I don't
Why don't
know.
we just tag it onto the fourth item at the
Yes.
technology item? We're gonna do that, and then we have some.
Yeah, I think it's imperative that we deal with it as soon as possible.
Okay,
Right,
let's
I agree.
continue this conversation with our old business, item letter C.
Regarding technology update.
Did anyone else have any commissioners' reports?
I might just point out for the folks in the room to clarify, especially for folks that were concerned about getting access to old minutes, old audio, that sort of thing. That's what this is a part of, just so that everyone knows the commission is working on that.
Is there any public comment on this commissioners' reports and updates? Okay, seeing none, we will continue to new business. San Francisco dog licensing. This is Commissioner Irani's initiative. San Francisco requires dog guardians to register their pets. The commission will discuss this regulation.
Sure, thank you. So I met with Supervisor Fuhrer a couple months ago as part of our reach out to the Board of Supervisors. I was able to get a meeting with her, and then I followed up with a meeting with one of her aides just a couple weeks ago. And one of her areas of concern is dog licensing. Basically, she's interested in having the whole process streamlined and enforced, and she's concerned that there's not enough compliance with our licensing law. So as I was looking into this issue, one thing I found out was that entities other than Animal Care and Control can actually contract to provide licenses, but it seems like there's not a lot of public awareness about that, both on that, it's possible to do that, and also there's no list of entities where people can get licenses. So she and her staff were kind of suggesting like maybe there can be some sort of public awareness initiative or campaign around why it's important to license your dogs. These are the places that you can go to do it. Even if it's just included on like the ACC website portal, that's a possibility. And also, Another idea that was brought up was whether or not, it would be a good idea to require, say, veterinarians to report unlicensed animals, or require dog walkers as part of, them getting their permits to check on licenses and not, refuse unlicensed dogs. And so I wanted to bring this up with the commission, just to get input on suggestions and kind of advantages and disadvantages of trying to enforce the licensing law more, and just to get thoughts on, those ideas that were floated.
I have a couple of things. There was an initiative a while ago where veterinarians could issue the licensing as well. I don't know how far that went, how many veterinarians can still do that. But what triggers the issue of the dog license is a rabies certificate. And so once a dog gets a rabies vaccination, which is going to happen either at their vet office or through a clinic, like the ones Friends of Animal Care Control hosts or other ones that are hosted over at Pet Food Express or things. So it's kind of finding the source. Rabies triggers the dog licensing. The follow-up comes from the, oddly enough, I think it's the tax assessor's office, the controller, which then says when you've expired, you need to then re-up your dog license. So maybe tightening up those two areas there. How many veterinarians are out there aware of it and should do it? And then also looking at the tightening up what's going on with the renewals and the follow-up to the renewals.
Yeah, because the renewals, the citizens do not receive a notification of renewal. It's upon him or her to go and.
So they do. You get one.
I've never received one. But no, I also remember from previous conversations that this was an issue, that they weren't, but maybe I'm wrong on that?
I don't know. I think there was a campaign for licensing. It was Be a Hero, Remember the Dog and the Little Keep and all that, to try and get more licensing done. It is part of the link to the rabies, and of course it's a requirement for dogs and not for cats. And typically at the clinics, especially if it's still on an ACC, you just do your vaccine and then you walk over to the counter and get your license, and it's all one-stop type of thing to make it convenient. It has been difficult. I mean, it's been a point of issue for us too, just because of the money goes to a different, whole different organization, and then they're kind of the ones that are supposed to do the renewals, and then the online thing stopped working. Like, it's been a pain for a while. So I don't think it's finalized yet, but we're doing different rabies tags that have more data associated with it, and a different company using that. So we're hoping that we can do kind of just a data dump to people that actually collect the money, so that's it is more streamlined, because we've had the same kind of complaints. Veterinarians that give rabies vaccines are supposed to submit that information to the city for that reason. Not all of them do. They're supposed to, so that there's at least a record of animals that are vaccinated. Hopefully that's a longer list than the ones that then go the next step and get licensed. Does that make sense? So they're supposed to be reporting whenever there's a rabies vaccine given.
It would be interesting to see how the reporting system works, because when I first moved to the city, I had trouble using the online system and had to go down to the tax collector, and he actually didn't know the prices that are in the city charter, and he told me to make up a price to pay him. And I even said that when I first came on the commission, but it would be interesting to see how they submit their records, because if it's super complicated, that's probably why it's not being done. So I feel like there's more layers to this, but there's a big money pot on the table and that's kind of not being dealt with. And then, we obviously don't want to make this regressive and go after people, but it needs to be a really streamlined process that it's like, because there's probably 30,000 people moving in and out of the city. So a lot of people are coming here with dogs that are already vaccinated. So how do we kind of deal with that?
Right, you mentioned that there is reporting regarding vaccinations, but not regarding licenses, right? There's no
I mean, once they're licensed and they have a tag number, I mean, that's part of a different database. But animals that are vaccinated, I mean, those records are kept in a couple of different places. But again, it's not all through ACC, so I don't know about that number. It's supposed to be reporting to the folks that do the licensing. But I say we're looking at a new program on how to do it because it has been problematic for everyone in the past. So I am hopeful that it will be a little bit easier for everyone. I know that there are very limited number of hospitals that have said, yeah, we'll also issue the license, but they're not very many. They are few.
Well, when we've had these conversations before, but it sounds like what I'm hearing is that now we have a supervisor who's interested in pursuing it. Because when we've talked about it before, I think a lot of it was, well, do we outsource the entire operation to a contractor, which sounds like it's starting to happen, but not entirely fully embracing that model?
It's in transition. I mean, we started with the new tags, but I don't know where we are on the whole record keeping piece of it. But it was creating a headache for everyone because there were kind of too many.
Well, it was creating a headache
and the money collection.
The money collection, and this should be a money-making endeavor for the city. Obviously, I think it was like $25 or something like that. But even so, I mean, it should be pretty easy money for the city. So as you say, there's money there to be had. I can't believe they would just leave it on the table. But now that we have a supervisor who's interested in it, I think it's worth revisiting. The other, not only was there money on the table, but then there was a question of the burden that was going to put on the ACC and the software that they currently had. Did they subtract all that kind of stuff?
So yeah, I can get more details on the switchover, but I mean, it's something that has been in process for a while for us too. You know, one of the issues I think when we have animals that are redeemed is they're meant to pay the license fee and be licensed if they are impounded or registered before they leave.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's a money issue for folks.
Right.
But and we have a lot of latitude for waiving fees, which most of the time we do. The license fee is a separate thing, so then we still have to try to collect everything regarding the license, even though we can forgive some of the others. So, because of the separate way that that's kind of,
Well, and also as far as Supervisor Fewer says that we could have a public education around this issue. And one thing that I think is lost on people is that, you know, when you get a dog, you hear about getting a chip and you have to pay for the chip and there's like a one-time fee. But it's a lot. It was a lot when I last did it. But the licensing is a type of tracking also. And so I think maybe people don't realize that once you license your dog for however much, $25 or whatever it is, there is a record of who the dog belongs to. And if the dog has his tag on, which he's supposed to, and ends up getting picked up, then he would be found. It's not necessary. In other words, it should not be necessary to do the chip if you were compliant with this. Is that fair to say?
I would still highly, highly recommend
A
the chip.
Yes.
The problem with the chip is that people don't then take the second step and
To register.
actually register it.
Yes.
with
But
their
if
own permission.
Supervisor
But
Fewer,
any identification, absolutely.
right, and if she wants to have in other words, how can we entice the public to comply with this? It is, you know, the security of your dog and someone finds him and whatever else we could add in. But I think it's an incentive.
On that note, I mean, here in San Francisco, compared to other places that I've worked in the country, we have to remember that we are kind of spoiled. We haven't had a human contract and die from rabies in over a century, and that's because of compliancy in rabies vaccines. And typically throughout communities, licensing and rabies vaccines are tied together for just that reason. Microchips are a whole other ballgame. I wasn't on the commission when this was brought up last, and I just have to wonder if anybody knows the answer to a couple of questions that I think are important. Number one, whose office is responsible for letting veterinary offices know that they need to be submitting the records on dogs that they vaccinated for rabies? Because that's definitely not done up to compliance from what I've seen in the clinics where I've worked, and that needs to change quickly if this is going to, hold any water as a system. Number two, it sounds to me like the tax assessor's office is who's actually responsible for then saying, hey, these animals were vaccinated for rabies, we want to see that they're licensed so that everybody is in legal compliance. If that's the case, then somebody needs to step up where they're lacking or where they're falling short there. And then lastly, this sounds like a huge pot of money. Where does this money go? Is this going to fix potholes, or is this directed back into
The shelter, I think it's supposed to go to the general fund. Right, but it goes to the general fund, and that's, but it doesn't even just go to the general fund, it goes through, I mean, who knows how much ever makes it to, yes, that was part of the conversation last time we talked about it, but yeah.
I mean, if they're overhauling the system, maybe they can overhaul it in such a way that those funds are earmarked to go back into helping animals in communities.
Or maybe encourage licensing, I mean, I think that's been an issue before.
Right.
Is that any kind of public service campaign is not going to be something ACWC can do on its own, right?
Right.
So if they want to use that money to help
Yes,
with the education piece, that would make the most sense.
right, but we need better tracking and allocation of those funds.
Which I think is getting better, but I'll have to see where it's at in that process.
Well, maybe we could, as a next step, maybe we could ask Sherry or someone at ACC. I'm always hesitant to put more work onto ACC, but if we could get some information on where it stands and what the process currently is, specifically the flow of the funds, and if we could present that to Fewer's office with some recommendations on maybe some easy solutions and maybe some like grand best case scenario solutions. And then because the supervisors have the power to make these things happen. Right? So it sounds like she just needs some information on what happens. Is that right?
Yeah, she does, and this was like her primary, area of concern,
Yeah.
and so she's definitely interested in working with
Yeah.
that. Also, Commissioner O'Neill, is there a timeline on kind of this progress, such as change that's been happening to kind of streamline it? Is there a timeline on that?
Well, I see the new chips, the new tags went into effect, I want to say maybe 4 months ago. But I'm not sure about the data system. That's the part I need to ask on, because I know that they've had several meetings with the director and come out and had several discussions, but I don't know if there's like an actual contract. That's the piece I don't know. I know that we've been discussing it with a couple different vendors, but I'm not sure where it sits right now.
So to understand, so is ACC in charge of hiring the contractor, or is this the city administrator?
I think that we're all working together with it.
Okay.
We're not the one collecting the fees, and it's a separate thing, but the idea would be using, data from our system that we already have,
Right.
and just kind of more automated, giving it to the people that need the information.
Plugging it to a contractor's,
Right,
yeah, who then would manage it.
right,
Yeah.
correct.
And I have one more question. I also was not on the commission when you, I guess, last did a public awareness campaign. When was that about licensing?
For the licensing,
Mhm.
I was, more than 5 years, I want to say.
Yeah, I would say it was probably 2012, 2013,
Okay.
somewhere in there. And there was a spike and then also at the clinics too, that the friends would host. You couldn't get the rabies vaccination until you bought, you couldn't get the free microchip unless you bought the dog license. And there were plenty of people who came just because they got a notice from the tax assessor's office saying that they had to be out there with their dog license. So there is an effort on that part to kind of tie those two together all the time. And then furthermore, we would tell them, this is entered into our system here, this microchip and this license that you have entered in here. But if your dog is in Truckee and it's lost, it's not the San Francisco database. So you need to nationally register this number. We try to do that and do follow-up. It's a lot of work, but it can be done.
Anyone else have any questions or comments on commissioners?
It would probably be good,
get a hold of that collateral from that public awareness campaign,
Mhm.
and maybe put that as part of the packet to give back to the
And-
supervisor?
Yeah, and I'll have the contact was, Nikisha, she's still there? No?
I'll
Okay. Yeah.
Because if there's already existing materials,
Mhm.
then
There is.
no point in recreating any new ones. You can just use that and repurpose it.
And if we're going to bring this up at a later meeting, would it be poignant to reach out to the tax assessor's office and see if they want to get a representative in here to give some information from their side? Anybody want to take lead on that, or I can contact them?
I'd be happy to call the tax assessor. And also, I may as well ask if they have a record of, like, the past fiscal year, how much has been collected, right? They would know.
Yeah, we should be able to know a number and the amount. The amounts are a little bit different based on if they're altered or.
Right,
that type of thing,
yeah, okay. Okay, and then, actually, if we got the number of, like, how many dollars were collected in the fiscal year, and then it's very simple math to figure out how much money is being left on the table, because we know how many, more or less, how many dogs are in the city, right? I mean, we have an approximate that number. I imagine it's a large chunk that's not being collected. Yeah. Okay, I will contact the tax assessor or someone from their office. Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Members of the public, is there any comment on this issue?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Linda Yakowicz. Anytime you bring up rabies, I hope that there will be something in what is passed that doesn't bring animals in yearly for vaccinations. They do not need yearly vaccinations, and I was pretty pissed off when we finally found that out. There's a 3-year rabies vaccine that's adjunctive free. That's one of the safest ones you can give. So that's every 3 years. So I hope they're not going to pin this on the rabies vaccine and make people come in every year, because that's unnecessary.
No, there's a 3-year license.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Your license.
Yeah, there's a 3-year license if you give the vaccine, but,
But that needs to be public. A lot of vets are still requiring people to come in yearly. They're asking people.
we still want to see your dog every year.
I understand that, but the main reason they're using is vaccines, and they're still vaccinating yearly. And that's
Well, I'd like to clear, as a non-vet here, but a dog guardian, the canine influenza there have been outbreaks, and that is not a 3-year vaccine. That is an annual vaccine. So there's the rabies vaccine, but there are other vaccines that are maybe administered on a yearly basis. I don't know other than that, but
the public needs to be educated
Yeah.
about that. That's my whole point. I mean, 10 years ago, it's been at least 10 years, they finally said you only need to vaccinate every 3 years. They were lying up until then.
for rabies.
Vaccinations.
That's
Period.
that's
No, all cats. This was all cats. You were told to bring your cat in every year to vaccinate your cat. This was like 15, maybe 20 years ago. And they finally came out and told the truth. We still are having lots of immunity problems. So that needs to be told to the public, and I hope that will be brought out. But one of the main reasons we got cat decline passed in San Francisco was a supervisor who was pissed off. And we got his take on it, and we were able to get cat decline passed because he was angry. So if you can get a supervisor tagged onto this, I would also want to know why is the supervisor so worried about licensing of dogs. To me, it's just a non-issue. It should be vets, because you're going to have people not wanting to come in if they're going to have to do something, and you're going to make vets cops. So it's just lots of thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sally Stevens, and I'm the chair of SF Dog. And I must say that I never heard of any PR campaign in 2012 or 2013 or whatever. So I don't think, whatever it was, it didn't make much of a splash. Not criticism of anybody, just that's the reality. It's actually a national issue. It's not just San Francisco, but nationally, dogs are under license. And one of the problems is people don't see any benefit from it, right? I mean, you pay your license fee for your car, and you can drive your car. pay a license for your dog, what do you get from it? So I think if the money could actually go towards animal issues or the shelter or something like that, that would help a lot, as opposed to just fixing potholes or whatever, or just going into the general fund, and who knows where that's going to end up. The other issue is that it's amazing to me the number of people that don't understand that you have to renew your license. They come, they think, I paid the license fee, that's it. And then they move and they don't get the follow-up notice and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's a huge PR issue. And SF Dog is happy to help in any way we can, because this is part of being responsible dog owners having a license. So whatever we can do to help them.
Just a couple of comments. My name is Sally Pena. Wouldn't the mayor's office know where the money from licenses for dogs goes? So how come you just can't ask the mayor's office? My second point would be that in terms of the problems with licensing dogs, perhaps if vets were required to issue licenses for dogs that weren't licensed, that would end the problem. So those are my two comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we will move on then to old business. SFSPCA, SFACC Feral Cat Program changes. This is Commissioner Tobin. I will read the introduction. Recently, SFSPCA and SF Animal Care and Control in partnership modified a long-standing feral cat program. Whereas in the past, mother cats and kittens less than 2 months old were captured from the wild, brought to the shelter, then returned to the wild, mother cats, or adopted kittens, the new policy is to allow mothers and kittens to stay in the wild until the kittens are weaned. Speakers tonight are Maria Conlin of Give Me Shelter and John Rockwell, who is a former ACC volunteer. Hope I got that right. Would you, Jane, did you want to add anything, or
I guess, I understand that, I kind of want to recap where we were last time. When we had quite an extensive meeting last time, and we left it that the commission would send a letter based on your recommendations and the discussion that went on that night, the questions that the commissioners asked. So we probably don't have enough for everybody here. I printed out 30 copies of the letter that we sent to Dr. Scarlett and to Director Donahue. And I then printed out the response we received yesterday from Director Donahue. So I know you're going to want to comment on some of these things, but I just wanted to set the stage. That's where we left it.
Could you read the response? No, if I have that, I don't think.
It's a fairly lengthy letter, and if you'd like me to read it, it includes data, so I can do that.
I think you should read it.
Okay,
So just to clarify,
do you want the letter that we wrote, or would you prefer the response?
Response.
Okay,
We read your letter.
okay.
And to clarify, this is from a response from Animal Care and Control.
This is a response, and
Director.
I can summarize. I was unclear myself whether or not we could provide Dr. Scarlett's response to it as a private organization. I'm sure we can. I will send that along to you, but I can summarize her letter, which is in line with what Director Donahue had to say. Again, this came the other day, yesterday. Dear Jane, the Commission's letter of June 20th did not indicate that the feral queen issue would be addressed again at the July meeting, so I had not planned to attend. I did watch the entire June Commission meeting and considered the recommendations in your letter. It was clear to me that there were concerns about the quality and quantity of data we have. In an effort to reach some clarity about what we know, we have scheduled a meeting with our cat volunteers for the evening of July 30th. We expect to review information comparing the 2018 and 2019 kitten seasons from March 1st through June 30th. We'll also be asking the cat volunteers what information they would like to receive on a regular basis. Our database system can be ornery, but we'll make every effort to obtain any data that they would find useful. At the June Commission meeting, a question was raised about kitten mortality rates. Dr. O'Neill did not have all the information with her, so here is that table, and the table then indicates of the intake of the 2017 kittens, those less than a month, the intake numbers were 581. There's acronyms DOA, DIK, and euthanized. So DOA is dead on arrival, DIK is died in kennel, and then euthanized. And the mortality rate of under a month in 2017 for those 581 was 45%. And so of those that were taken in from 1 month to 6 months, of which there were 1,207, there were only 79 that were reported in the DOA, DIK, euthanasia, with a mortality rate of 7%. So moving forward to 2018, those same numbers, the intake for less than a month was 692. 323 of those were DOA, DIK, or euthanized, that's a 47%. And then 1 to 6 months, 1,081, 98 were DOA, DIK, or euthanized with a mortality rate of 9%. So those numbers are fairly close. So I'll continue on with the letter. Fundamentally, though, while the data is helpful in making educated decisions, this is not a discussion about numbers, but about doing the right thing. SPCA and ACC have both spoken with many of the trappers in foster homes. Clearly, opinions are divided. ACC's role is to make the best possible decision with the available information. When veterinarians from 3 different organizations express serious welfare concerns for feral queens, this is the depth of expertise that needs to be respected. These veterinarians have devoted their lives and careers to animal welfare. They do not make recommendations lightly. At ACC, they examine every animal who comes through the shelter before they go out to foster, when they come back for checkups, and when they're here on the adoption floor. They treat all who are sick. They're very hands-on. We also consider the experience of the professional animal care attendants from both organizations who care for thousands of cats and kittens who pass through both shelters. As a matter of public policy, I would be remiss if I did not seriously consider the views of professionals who are working directly with the cats. We understand that feral moms move kittens, and leaving them outside longer will make them harder to trap and more vulnerable to predators. When they are in untenable situations, we will call trappers to bring them to the shelter and try to find foster homes for them because the shelter environment is unbearable for an outdoor animal. Together, we will carefully track calls to record what's happening in the field and continue to strive to improve results. Since March 1st, 2019, the SPCA has received 12 calls about nursing queens and their kittens. Of these, 3 finders have not returned calls, so we have no information about those litters. Of the remaining 9, 3 were brought into community cats, 2 went to Tony's Kitty Rescue, 2 are still working with community cats, 1 was adopted, spayed, neutered by the finder, and the last group of the queen lived, but all the kittens died within a few days of natural causes. There has been a concern expressed that waiting to intake feral moms will result in an increase in the feral population. Both SPCA and ACC will continue to trap, spay, neuter. In terms of overall intake, this year ACC has received 124 more kittens than for the same time period last year. Clearly, it's too early for this to be caused by the change to the feral mom protocols. At the end of the season, we will evaluate this year's intake against the prior years to see if we can determine a reason for the increase, since the intake for kitten season 2017 and 2018 were virtually identical. So that is the response from
So the 40% death rate was just that 1 year?
We will do, public comment will be after the commissioners discuss. Go ahead, Jane, please.
Would you, do you want me to read Dr. Scarlett's response? No, okay. It's similar, with the note that we're, constantly evolving and improving, trying to learn, using evidence-based findings to help animals as best they can. valuing the volunteers and understanding their commitment to doing what's best for the animals, and how they work towards policy change. They
A letter
did,
from the SPCA?
it is a letter from the SPCA.
Okay, we're not gonna respond to comments from the public at this
Um,
time. We will have time to do that. May I just clarify something about what these letters are? As we said, these letters were sent to SPCA and ACC after our meeting, and it was sent within days. I wanna say within days, I don't have the date, but
Mhm.
probably on the letter.
I think we sent it on Monday.
Right.
We mailed it, and then we emailed it, and then we didn't hear anything. And if you read my, or the commission's original letter, we actually did, I would say, did not say this will be on the agenda, although that was in the meeting that we had. Everyone that was here knew that we were gonna do that. And then I sent a follow-up email to Virginia Donahue and Dr. Scarlett, who acknowledged that, in fact, we did say it was gonna be on the agenda, and that this was their response to that.
May I? Well, I wanted to clarify the reason. So we asked for a response. We prodded for a response. We only got this response, is it yesterday? So on the commission, it was unclear to us, given that Animal Care and Control is a city agency, we felt comfortable that that was public information. We felt comfortable publishing that letter from Animal Care and Control, but we weren't quite sure how to address the SPCA letter, and so we didn't really have time to sort that out. I apologize for that. We also didn't have time to know if we could print these letters in response, but we intend to be transparent about that. But I just wanted to clarify that that's why the timing of it was such that we weren't able to have copies for the public. But we did get responses. We heard the ACC's response, and then the SPCA. In summarizing the SPCA, I would like to say that Dr. Scarlett from the SPCA says that that this decision was based on research and experience of experts working the animal welfare and community cat field. San Francisco is not alone or even on the forefront of this change. So similar tone to what ACC, and I think similar message, just slightly different. But I'll let you continue, Jane. Thank you.
Right. And mainly, I guess what I wanted to say, because we were trying to discover ourselves, what can we do? What is the action of the commission? So our discussion at the end was, we are going to send a letter requesting, sort of summarizing what we heard, and from that we decided to recommend a suspension in the policy until more data was delivered or understood on both parts. And I know that's something that you want to address tonight as well too. And that we saw issues with communication and trust, and we saw issues with process or how planning and policy change happens, and the inclusion of stakeholders in those decisions, and also understanding the vision, the overall vision that includes the voice of that. So that was the intent. That was our action. That's what we did. This is the response, and we kind of left it at that cliffhanger. Now we're here with you in the room. It's your turn to come up here, and you've seen this letter, and had about as much time as the response as I did. So if you want to come up here, and Maria, I know you had a presentation that you.
Well, I want to, and also just to talk about the process of how this ended up. They said that they weren't sure. ACC said she wasn't sure that it was going to be on the agenda. The reason this conversation is on the agenda again is because Maria Conlon came to us and said, I have more data. When we had our discussion last month, there were some missing pieces. Maria said she has more data, and can she present that again to the commission? So that's why it's, again, we're continuing the discussion. Probably we would have added it to the agenda if we had had the letter, because we would have discussed that, but that only came after. Anyway, so that's where we are, and that's why we're discussing it. And so with that, Maria, would you like to continue your presentation and fill us in on?
Sure, I think. Will those letters appear on your website?
get to that. Again, please.
That is item number C.
Yeah, and again, I ask the public to be patient. There's a process, and we would like to save public comment for after Maria.
Right, so Rocky was going to just take a few minutes.
Mr. Rockwell, would you please present?
Hello, I'm John Rockwell, volunteer trapper and foster parent. Thank you for having us back. For purposes of this discussion, I'm going to consider ACC and SPCA to be a single entity, since they do work closely together on many projects, and especially this unfortunate policy we're discussing tonight. This is not about, you'll be happy to know, UC Davis studies. It's not about capacity for care. It's not about stressed out mom cats, and it's not about tons and tons of data. What it's about is one very simple thing, very tragic thing, and that's dead kittens. Dozens of dead kittens every week because Jennifer Scarlett and Virginia Donahue have sentenced these little kittens to death for the one unforgivable offense of being born to a feral mom. And let's be clear, we're not talking about some nice, gentle, painless, quiet euthanasia type death. We're talking about several days of agonizing deterioration from diseases that could have been very easily treated had they been in a shelter or a foster home before they finally blind the kitten or die. Also situations where the mom cat goes out foraging for food. She gets hit by a car or somebody picks her up and she never makes it back to the nest. Her little week-old kittens end up starving to death after a day or two. You might, if you were cynical, you might think that the lucky kittens were the ones who only suffered for a few seconds of stark terror or excruciating agony while they got ripped to shreds by a raccoon or a coyote that was preying on them. So why do they do this? Well, that's a good question, and we kind of wondered that ourselves. I mean, they have words in the titles of the two organizations, like Animal Care and Control, Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, that would make you think that they do just the opposite. And in fact, they used to do just the opposite for several decades. We had a really good, robust TNR program and got lots and lots of queens with their kittens and got them into good homes. But all of a sudden, things have changed. Now, a month ago, we had 3 high-priced veterinarians in this room that were sent here by the two organizations to convince us that they have the animal's best interest at heart. Now, I'm sure that they're excellent vets. I know that Sherry O'Neill is. I worked with her. But their ignorance of the feral cat population was on stark display here that night, because they used data that was very meaningless and confusing and not at all scientific, studies that didn't apply at all in the Bay Area, and it was really kind of embarrassing, and I felt sorry for them. But they were sent here by their bosses to try to defend the indefensible. So since we don't have any real reasons why they're changing this policy, we're sort of left with speculation. What could it be that's driving them to this new policy of acting as a barrier between the trappers and the people who call in about kittens? Is it the staff? Do they just not want to have the inconvenience of having to deal with these queens and their kittens? Maybe, we don't know. Is it the live release rate? Are they afraid that'll go down if the occasional kitten just doesn't make it? Maybe. Is it money? Everything's about money these days, but you know, this program that we're trying to get reversed is very volunteer intensive and should be a minimal cost. I mean, we don't get paid very much. We work for minimum wage essentially as volunteers. Our minimum wage is $0 per hour, I think, at the last rate we had. We do get double time on the weekends. So, since they don't have any real reasons for this, we can't get at their motivation. They have their reasons, but we're just not allowed to know. We know what our motivation is. Our motivation is helping the animals, and I'm referring to the volunteer and the animal rescue community. We want the two organizations to stop being a barrier between the trappers and the people who call in about kittens. We want them to go back to to seeing this as a team effort like it always was ever since I've lived here. I moved here in 2002, and it was a great environment to work with ACC and SPCA, but not anymore. Now they're secretive. They waste their time threatening people for passing out leaflets on the sidewalk outside SPCA. Occasionally they'll even have their lawyer send out a letter firing somebody for being a volunteer. Not sure how this benefits the animals, but they must have their reasons. So that's what we're looking for. Now, I'm going to turn the stage over to Maria. She has a much better presentation than mine. She has some great pictures, by the way. And her overriding message, which is also what I want to leave you with, and what everybody in this room behind me, I'm sure, agrees with, is help us to help them. Okay? If we don't know about them because they sit on all the information that comes in, we can't help them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria Conlon, co-director at Commission Shelter Cat Rescue, and thank you for having me back and allowing us to speak. After you sent out your letter, and thank you very much for sending out your letter, I wanted to address the data deficiencies, because it said we were, and I think part of that was we actually made a conscious decision to not have data in our presentation and have it be more about our experience. Oh, sure. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Anyways, but before I start my presentation, I just wanted to, because we, of course, just got the letter right before the meeting, I'd like to know, I would be interested in seeing in the statistics the differentiation between DOA, DIK, and euthanasia. Because say you have 150 kittens come in that are already dead, is that really going to impact your numbers, right? That's going to make a big difference. So I'd like to know what the difference is between those, between that data. Because I think that's substantial. The other thing, I mean, there's a lot of things I could comment on, but the one thing, having the shelter environment, it says shelter environment is unbearable for an outdoor animal. The shelter environment is unbearable for a lot of animals. Should we stop sheltering them altogether? It's safer for them to be inside where they're able to be cared for. So just wanted to make those comments in regards to the letter. And then this actually is a feral mom here and her with her kittens being housed in a large room in a kennel. And so what I wanted to present today was in regards to data that we have. Do you have that other copy? That copy of the presentation? I'm not trying to talk into the mic and look at the computer is a little awkward, so I just have to have an extra copy. So what we wanted to present, and unfortunately Jen was unable to help out, but they did help me get some of the data regarding the Tony's Kitty Rescues, foster homes, and feral moms for kittens. So we have, so you can see on the screen, and I gave a copy for the record, 10 volunteer foster cares for feral moms and kittens. 2 of those can actually take 2 different families in separate spaces. And as you can see, I guess according to the number of calls that they got, they have 12 calls, so you have 10 volunteer foster homes. So you probably could cover most of them depending on the timing when they come in. And then there's an average of 4 to 5 kittens in a litter. These kittens can be socialized together or with a feral mom. Oftentimes when they come in and they're really young, the kittens don't display any feral behaviors anyway. A lot of that has to do with trying to survive outside. And then, so from that, you can see that TKR has the capacity to rescue between 48 and 60 kittens during any given time if they're with their moms. And this actually is yet another feral mom with her kitten in a foster home. Moving on, so then we move into socializing feral kittens. So they're sort of the they're they're the victim of this policy as well, because now you're getting these kittens that are coming older that they weren't trapped with their feral mom, so now they've gotten older. And these little guys, actually, 5 years ago, I was volunteering with Animal Care and Control in the orange, what they call the orange group, and these are the volunteers that help socialize cats when they come into the shelter. So I learned a great deal from that. These are my very first feral kittens that I fostered from Tony's Kitty Rescue 5 years ago. And they were little Spitfires. They did the hiss, spit, stomp. Have you ever seen that? So when they're like little and a month old, it's almost hilarious. But they can still, you know, if you don't handle them and you're not experienced, it can be, you know, it can still be unsafe for you. But anyway, so these are my first little feral kittens. So you have 8 volunteers that have the capacity to socialize feral kittens from Tony's Kitty Rescue. Then, and oftentimes with them though, because they need a little more attention, sometimes you can do them in pairs or you can do them individually, depending on how much socialization you need. Sometimes it's, I don't know if they do this, but sometimes it's nice to be able to mix them with a more social kitten, and then they kind of show them the ropes. So TKR can socialize between 8 and a maximum of 16 kittens at any given time if they come in after they're weaned. So I just want you to just take a good look at this picture and these little, they're not so fierce, but you know, they look mad, right? They don't look like happy kittens, right? And then you can see the positive outcome for the feral kittens. So thanks to TKR foster programs, that's where I learned was feral kittens can be socialized, and they don't even look like the same kittens, right? They look like happy, healthy little kittens. And then there's another little buddy in there with them.
What age is that?
They're about a month old. Yeah, they're about a month old. Anyway, so I just wanted to share some of the things that, you know, for the changes that are going on, and maybe I can just read through this briefly. This is a longtime volunteer. She's been at ACC for about 9 years. You know, it's that we really want to collaborate. We want to work with ACC to work on this, you know, capacity for care. It doesn't have to be all on their own. And I'll just read it briefly. When I started volunteering in 2010, there were nearly double the cats being cared for at ACC every year. These used to be closed off with a litter of kittens in each kennel. In July, every single kennel was full. I'm thrilled that the city has done such a good job with TNR in spaying and neutering and homed cats as well, and that the cats in ACC's care now have more space to play. But I'm concerned that ACC is pushing more and more cats into overburdened rescues, and when there are multiple double kennels and condos left open in the shelter. So in here you can see the reduction of, this is from ACC's website, so this is the reduction in intake of cats. So you can see from 10 years ago, the cats, there were 3,800 cats, and then just this last fiscal year, 2017 to 2018, 2,300 cats about. So, and increasing to a live release rate of 90%, that you have 1,400 fewer cats than you had 10 years ago. So that's a pretty good change, I would say. And I don't think the latest numbers are up, so we can't review those. So then we're just going to do a quick little walkthrough of ACC. So you have 48 empty double and 4 empty single cages. So this is sort of some pictures of ACC. And the cats, the kennels with you can see the paper on them, those are ones with cats in them. The other ones are empty. And this is just recent. These aren't old pictures. So a quarter of 210, that's the rooms, they're numbered if you're not familiar with ACC, was recently closed off to prospective adopters, even though those kittens were available.
Why?
We'll get to that. Meanwhile, other kittens wait in close quarters in 2008. So this is what's considered the lost cat room. This is where the orange volunteers go in and they socialize the cats and kittens, and the staff takes care of the cats and kittens. The public may not enter this space. Only the advanced level volunteers can socialize in this room. So this kitten has been in 208, has been available for a full week and not been out on the floor visible to potential adopters. And then we move on to our little feral kittens. They're the side effect of this policy. And you know, they always come in. You're always going to get them older. You don't catch them all. But the sooner you can get them, the easier they are to turn around. So these little guys were true Spitfires when they came into the shelter. They were about 2 months old. Fortunately, volunteers were able to lobby for them and get them more time to be socialized. And you can see, as you go back out, I'll show you the picture before. So they look a little bit fearful. And then the volunteers work with them and socialize them. They've been in this shelter for 20 days since they were in the shelter, and like many longtime ACC cats, they were not sick. And then I wanted to kind of go into, some of the effects of what I've observed and other volunteers have observed as the impact of capacity for care and the length of stay programs that they put in place. So many cats are frightened tame cats that come into the shelter. They're not feral, but they display feral behaviors in the shelter because they're scared in that environment. They're actually, FACC is required by law to hold these cats, the tame cats, for 6 days and 3 days for feral cats. So feral cats only have, a cat that's deemed feral rather, only has 3 days to adjust. This little kitten featured here was actually taken out by Give Me Shelter Cat Rescue. I have in his behavior notes claiming that this kitten was feral. He's 4 to 5 months old, and so that would have put him over the threshold of what now ACC is allowing, which is 3 months to socialize them when they come in. So he's yet another, he was found on Washington and Stockton, I believe, in the street. So if we had not intervened and put a hold on him, this kitten would have been sent back outside. This kitten I brought home as my own personal foster, and he needed zero socialization. He was just fearful in the shelter, which is true of many cats and kittens. So, and that's what happens then. These kittens and these cats, it's adult cats too, they're sent back outside and not given a chance. Like even, for example, we even Gimme Shelter recently took a cat that's sitting at Petco that came in, and they thought the mom was maybe semi-feral when she first came into the shelter because she's very fearful there, and she's also protective of her kittens. But now that cat is sitting over at Petco, so it's not so fearful. But our point we're talking about the length of stay and wanting to reduce the length of stay and have the kittens be there longer. But these other previous kittens that I showed have been there for 20 days and they aren't sick. So, which is, I know, something that they shared in their, the veterinary staff shared in their presentation last time, saying that like 90% of cats would get sick after 10 days or something like that. And I'm not sure I would also like to see where that statistic came from. So isn't a day or two or even a few more days worth a lifetime of happiness or being inside rather than having us put more cats out on the street? I truly believe, and I think many of my cat community would believe, that it's inhumane to send a friendly cat back outside just because they're scared when there are other options. When San Francisco really does have the resources to help these cats. And then here's a little bit more. This is another kitten that failed her behavior at ACC. So kittens, and this is something that it's like I really have a lot of trouble with, I guess, is that you have shelters that are just 2 hours away that are overloaded with kittens, where kittens go out the door in garbage bags rather than out the front door through options of being adopted. You have shelters across the bay, just in the East Bay, that they closed off taking in owner surrender animals because they were so full with shelters. And yet at ACC you have kennels sitting open and kittens sitting in the back rooms waiting for their opportunity to be adopted. They're also, I've learned recently that kittens that are available kittens, not kittens that are failed behavior like this guy, but are being sent out to rescue groups. So you're utilizing rescue groups because you have too many kittens, is what I was told. And I'm not talking about sending kittens to TKR, Tony's Kitty Rescue, or to SPCA. This is outside rescue groups. So they're sending kittens to outside rescue groups, even though they have open kennels available. So this is putting a burden on overloaded rescues. Most rescues are solely volunteer run, and whereas you have staff, you have 2 vet staff, you have 2 vet techs, you have multiple ACOs at ACC working. to help the cats. I have also learned that SFACC has put a limit on the number of black kittens they'll have available on the floor to create a diverse cat and kitten population. So this is what I understand is from the Capacity for Care program, that you want to have a diverse population. If you read on the website, Dr. Karsten, she talks about having a diverse population of cats. So black cats are already an at-risk population in many shelters. So why would you want to? Why would an extra special city like San Francisco, with the capacity to take care of these animals, want to do that to the black kittens? And I mean, from my experience, the way it works, I always end up fostering like full litters of black kittens. I always have black kittens at my house, and just doesn't, nature doesn't work out that way. It isn't like, oh, we're gonna give you all Siamese now, you know, it's like, it just doesn't work that way. And you know, we all know, like, Siamese, you put them out, they'll get adopted like that. Black cats, you know, it's just, you have to market them differently. So I just want to, just a few more things about the impact of capacity for care and length of stay. There are staff at the shelter that are unable to handle and vaccinate kittens. I know because you see it on the behavior notes when unable to vaccinate, feral, etc. And it just, again, just because a cat is deemed feral initially, it could be just that they're scared. And just that they came in from a stray situation. The SFACC also has a program where they're rating the kittens. So they're rating from 0 tame to 5 very feral. Any volunteers are prohibited from handling those kittens from levels 3, 4, and 5. If they, the problem is with these kittens is that you need to handle them. That's how they're socialized. If you don't handle them, they don't learn to bond with humans. In fact, a volunteer from Beauty Shelter, also a trapper, tried to bring in a kitten to ACC just the other day. This is like 1 or 2 days ago. 2.5 pounds. And the kitten was, they were told to take the kitten to the community cat program at SBCA, that ACC would not take the kitten. So there, and that goes into, and that's not the first time that this happened, ACC has agreed that they would socialize kittens under 3 pounds, and yet they'll send them back outside like that, or they won't even take them into the shelter. They'll just, reject them and tell them to go to community cat care program. So these are all like side effects of this, feral mom and kitten issues. And SBCA, and then my understanding is that SBCA will TNR kittens over 2 months. If the staff is available, they will actually assess them. I know this isn't, you have no oversight of SBCA, just want to let you kind of know what that is. And then, my question is, and the cat community is, why make these changes now? The reality of kitten season is it always sucks. It sucks every year. We all love kittens, and we hate that there's so many of them, and we want to help so many of them from so many other places, And why would, when San Francisco cat intake has been consistently dropping every year, why are these changes being made? When we have the capacity, we have open kennels, we have places to put these kittens and these mom cats, we have fosters that we're showing, why are we doing this? Why are we leaving the kittens outside to die when we have the resources and the people available to help them and to save them? And I will say, Rocky said, we work for $0 an hour. I'm going to say I am running a deficit because I'm always buying kitten food and paying for veterinary care and doing different things so that I can help just one more cat. And I know the rest of these people do that too. The next thing I just wanted to show, because you said we were lacking in statistics, and this is ironically from Dr. Kate Hurley from UC Davis, this quote. And this is from a thing that she has, I believe it's on New Paradigms for Shelter Cats and Community Cats. This talks about the survival rate of kittens outdoors. So even if if your mortality rate is 45%, you seem to have even a higher rate if you do that than leaving them outside, right? So even if you're really truly having 45% of kittens die in the shelter, your mortality rate is still going to be lower than if they're outside. So while adult cats and kittens can thrive in the community, kittens are less likely to survive. In one study, 75% of feral kittens died or disappeared before they were 6 months of age.
Do you know where that was?
I will show you after, yeah.
Because the study I read was 60%.
Anyways, there's multiple studies. This is just one example, and I'm just saying I'm using this example because this is Dr. Dr. Hurley is from UC Davis, which is the same place that Dr. Carson is from, so that's why I chose this particular quote. Anyways, it's a similar rate to other small carnivores. TNR programs will alleviate the risk by reducing reproduction. Kittens should also be prioritized for rehoming through shelter programs whenever possible, and we've had those in place, so why are we removing them now? However, euthanasia rates over 75% are not uncommon for shelter cats. Yet in San Francisco, it just showed that on ACWC's website that they have a 90% live release rate. So this is not even comparable. So when a better chance of survival can't be provided by a shelter, like for example in the Central Valley, healthy kittens might be better off remaining in place. But here, that's not the case. We have an opportunity to rehome them, and we have been rehoming them. So why not take these cats and kittens in? So. And then again, just finalizing, closing out, we want to we want you to help us, help save these most vulnerable kittens. We're just asking again that they continue to, or start sending out volunteer trappers when members of the public call ACC. I understand that some of this has been passed off to SPCA, but we don't have oversight over SPCA. We don't know what they do, and we'd like to have ACC be participating in, so we have some kind of oversight and we know what cats and kittens are when people are calling about this stuff. We would like to, and I do understand there have been some discussions, and Virginia did say in her letter that a couple of the feral moms did go to Tony's Kitty Rescue, so we want to make sure that commitment keeps going. And then we also want to give these under-socialized kittens a chance. So now if they've been out there longer, give them a chance to help these experienced volunteers work with them and give them a chance to be in a home, because it's really not that hard. It takes my kittens, the picture, when I looked up the pictures, they were taken like 9 days apart from each other. So, then they look like totally normal, happy, healthy kittens. I also just want to say that when I first started volunteering at ACC and then being a rescue partner with them, I always felt like, maybe there weren't as many people as experienced with cats, but that it didn't matter because we had such great cat advocates and such a great cat volunteer community that they were working together with us. And they took a lot of, they listened to what the people said that were experienced, and we worked together to make those changes. So I never worried about it until now, where I feel like the volunteer cat community has really been not included. So I just thank you again for taking the time to let me present a little bit of the data and to sort of, I guess, respond to some of the things that I heard in the last presentation from the veterinary vets. And then I just want to ask, I'm not sure what the next steps are. I want to find out from you what the next steps are. So thank you.
Thank you so much,
Sure.
both you and Rocky, for presenting tonight. I definitely want to open this up to the commissioners. I'm sure that everyone has questions they'd like to ask. So Maria or Rocky, if you want to, remain up there to answer any questions.
Sure.
Can I just ask a quick question about Scarlett's letter in response to yours first, since we brought that up, for Scarlett's letter?
Sure.
You were summarizing it, and one of the things you asked in your letter was put the old policy back into effect until they have data to support the change.
Right.
She's not going to do that, is that correct?
I did not see that in the letter. So
You
there's
didn't address it?
No. But what I did see, and I actually have a question for you, so maybe I'll kick this off. So Virginia noted in her letter that at the end of July there's going to be a meeting with the cat volunteers. How many of you are attending that meeting?
Well, because we're not volunteers at ACC, I don't believe we're invited to that meeting. So I believe that's for ACC volunteers.
For the record, I would say about 5 people raised their hands. What would you say? More than that? Russell?
By the way, you introduced me as a former ACC volunteer.
I did.
Oh, okay.
I did.
Do you know something I don't know? I was fired by SPCA a month ago, but I went, oh, okay.
Apologies.
I'm still an ACC volunteer.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
No, I have not been sent here to inform you of any changes in your staff. Sorry about
I may not have all the up-to-date information, so I'm always willing to listen.
You're still on the payroll for $0.
I need it too. So, you had questions?
Okay, and then I'll open it up there. So I was encouraged by that there is an open communication there between ACC and the CAP volunteers. I'd, like to hear more about the outcome of those meetings, of course, but I also want to leave this open to the rest of the commissioners to ask as well.
In that letter from Virginia Donahue, near the end, like the second or third paragraph at the end, she said something about, we know that the mom moves the kittens. That was the beginning of a paragraph there. But then she just dropped it and went on to another subject. She didn't say maybe that would help us realize that we should get the trappers out there immediately before they get. She
We
didn't say
understand that feral moms move kittens, and leaving them outside longer may make them harder to trap and more vulnerable to predators.
Right. So she understands that, but they're not going to do anything about it.
When they are in an untenable situation, we will call trappers to bring them to the shelter and try to find foster homes for them because the shelter environment is unbearable for an outdoor animal pet.
Okay, so she doesn't say how they decide if it's untenable or not. See, that's one of the problems. If they're going to assess whether it's a good situation or not, they think they can do it over the phone by asking a member of the general public questions. And the general public usually doesn't really know anything about cats and their habits and stuff. So it really requires an experienced trapper to go there in person and have a look at it. And that's the thing that they will not do now, is to even let the trappers know when somebody calls in about kittens. That's the main point that I've been trying to make for a few months now.
I have a quick question just regarding capacity of adoptables. I plan on reaching out to ACC and SPCA and getting some numbers on their side, but once these kittens are rescued, once they're socialized, and we're talking about the ones that aren't returned out as community cats, what have your volunteers and associated volunteers and organizations been able to do in terms of numbers of adopting out and placing these cats with all the efforts?
I'm sorry, do you mean the cats at ACC or?
No, I'll ask ACC and SPCA about their numbers when we can do that. And I'm just wondering from the volunteers' perspective, when you're out doing adopt-a-thons and various strategies for placing these cats ultimately, about how many per year are you able to get out?
Well, through Gimme Shelter Cat Rescue, if that's what you're asking about, we adopt out about 200 cats a year. And we do it, a lot of it is, we have a website, post to Pet Finder and Adopt a Pet, so we're promoted that way. We take good pictures and we write personalized bios on those. And I actually know because I'm the one that does it. We also have social media outlets, so we post on Instagram and Facebook regularly to promote and get people to know and understand the cats. And sometimes we have them, the ones that are, trying to focus. We have also 2 adoption locations, so we have cats in there. Again, I totally understand you don't want a cat sitting in any kind of kennel for too long, so if cats have been in adoption centers for too long and aren't getting adopted, we'll move them to foster homes and let them live in foster homes. I mean, that does take longer typically to get those cats adopted, but that's why we utilize social media to promote those cats. Does that answer your question?
The simple answer is they all get adopted.
Well, yeah, the Tony's Kitty Rescue, the rep just came up here and said all the kittens get adopted from them.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're
100%.
My bigger question was with 18 people working to rescue these kittens, how many are we actually able to place on an annual basis through your facilities?
Well, I mean, Tony's Kitty Rescue, they go up for adoption through ACC. But if you're asking about Gimme Shelter Cat Rescue, I mean, we end up placing the cats that we take, or we find situations for them.
I think he's looking for a specific number.
Oh, I said 200. We adopt about 200 cats a year.
You get about 200 out per year, and that's awesome.
Yes.
I mean, as somebody who works every kitten season to get out 4 or 5,
right.
That's impressive. So
200 cats, not just including kittens. In fact, I would say that ACC and SBCA do better with kittens than Gimme Shelter does, because I find that everybody goes to both those organizations because you have a multitude of kittens to choose from, whereas we have like a smaller population of kittens, so everybody goes there and then they wait until our kittens get older and then they don't have any kittens and then they adopt our kittens. Kind of how it works.
And just as somebody with an epidemiology background, eventually I'd like to have an idea of how many kittens in San Francisco can be placed on an annual basis, and that's sort of going to speak to our target base.
Right. Did I answer that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And 200 is amazing. That's great work.
Thank you. And that's all volunteer-run organizations, so. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I want to back up what you said about the new data we were just given in this letter. The DOA, the IK, and the euthanasia group, they're all together, so that really doesn't explain much at all. And then it's really concerning to me that there's only 2 data points, 2017 and 2018. Just as someone with a stats background, that's not a lot of data points in general to make an informed decision. I think it's common to have about 30. But even having the last 10 years would be a lot better than nothing. And then also to be able to compare Gimme Shelter and the numbers that you guys are seeing in terms of, are any of these kittens being brought back to ACC to euthanize, that sort of thing, if that ever happens. But I wanted to back you up that these numbers still don't make sense.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's because what if you have 100 kittens that come in that are dead, then it doesn't really, your euthanasia rate then it's going to be different, yeah.
Well, a lot of kittens, a certain number of kittens will also be brought in that are not going to make it in any case. They're already so far gone for whatever reason. And that's not, you know, they don't distinguish between those and the healthy ones, the ones that start out healthy.
Thank you. Anything else?
I have one question about the numbers, and I hope this comes up at the next meeting, because I think this data would be useful. I mean, we're talking about the policy change for feral queens and kittens.
Yes.
So I'd like, in addition to the less than a month, of that 581 or 692, how many of those were kittens of feral queens? Because that's the number, and that's the policy change.
Right, and that's, I remember, I mean, I sat in Virginia Donahue's office with Lana, the director of Gimme Shelter, and she said there was no way to indicate with those kittens whether they came in with a mom cat or not. Not even a feral mom. There's no way to indicate whether it was a mom or a feral mom, or the kittens were individual IDs, I guess, if you would call it. Yeah.
Well, I'm encouraged that there's a meeting on July 30th. These are questions that I think, you would also be asking the CAP volunteers what information they'd like to receive on a regular basis. These are important pieces of information for everybody, for the whole success rate of the policy change, or not. You know, I think both organizations. I don't want to overstate what they're saying.
Right.
You can read it. Got it. I don't want to go into the head, but I think I will say that I do believe, not everybody here believes me, but I do believe that we're all here because we love the animals, and that includes both of these organizations that have written letters and have a policy change. And it's different philosophical approaches, and it's going to take a lot of communication and a rebuilding of trust. And that's going to come between you and these two other partners to understand where they're coming from, where you're coming from, and if that policy change is actually helping or hurting the community. I kind of want to say, I mean, my thought right now is I want to leave it to you guys at this point to take this next step with ACC. There's an open invitation for this. I don't know if it's open. There's an invitation to continue this dialogue. Use it. Challenge each other. Get the best out of this. We're only better when we start challenging one another. And that's
Yes, I agree with you there, but let's keep in mind that July 30th is a long time from early April, which is when this all started. When we started telling both Virginia Donahue and Jennifer Scarlett how we felt about it. Not just me, not just Maria, but lots of people who work with the feral community a lot. And I wonder whether they would have even had the July 30th meeting if it hadn't been for the letter you sent them. There didn't seem to ever be any discussion of that before you sent them the letter. So I'm not saying that it doesn't mean anything. It just seems like it's been an awful long time since we've been strongly advocating for going back to the way the policy has been for 20 years.
Right. And as I said, this is going to take an effort to rebuild the trust. And there is an invitation here. And my thought is, take it. Do what you can to continue these conversations and report back to us what you find.
I would absolutely reiterate what Jane is saying. Hopefully you can come together and possibly have some sort of meeting among all of you and go in have very concise lists of wants, demands, and asks from them. I believe you already know what those are and have them and understand what they are, but to go in with very specific desires and needs and an outcome that you want, I think is going to be very beneficial in this instance.
We will definitely do that, and we have been doing that for months now.
No, I understand that, and you're all here together. You are very impressive, and you've been working as a group for years and years, and because of that is where we are today. The feral cat community in San Francisco would not be what it is without the volunteers, obviously. So I would just really encourage you to keep doing that, and as Jane said, I don't know if encourage is the right word, but hopefully we can use this and you can use this as an opening to continue to push them to go back to where their policy was before. It seems like the resources are there, the volunteers are there, the community's there, the space is there in these shelters. One kind of other thing that hopefully that you can work on this, and the question I asked last month, hopefully you can kind of put them out there to, they're building a $20 million new facility. Hopefully you can work with them and they can go forward, and you have a fantastic opportunity to create a new space at this brand new wonderful facility specifically designed for feral cats and things. And I would hopefully encourage you to work on that and try to decide what you want and what you envision that space to be, and to work with them to create that space now that you have this opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I mean, we want them to work with us. We want them to work with us like they formerly did, the staff, and rely on the expertise of the CAP volunteers. So we definitely want that. Maria, I have a question for you. Sure. When I received Virginia Donahue's letter, I'm coming at this from an outsider. I'm not a CAP volunteer. I'm not involved in it. And I was here at the last meeting, and I was concerned about some of the things that we heard and we discussed here. I was encouraged that we got a response from Virginia Donahue, and that it did address one of the big questions that we had at the last meeting. Was we seem to hear that there is data to support this decision, and then we didn't really have so much data. And then the other question is what kind of data we're going to use when we determine if this new program has been successful or not. So when I received this letter from Virginia, I was encouraged to see that she responded with that so far this year, the ACC has received 124 more kittens than the same period over last year. Also in our conversation last year, we talked about how we might have a spike in kittens due to the rainy season, and that might produce more kittens. So my question to you is, when I read that there are more kittens this year versus last year, this seems encouraging to me. What is your take on that?
Encouraging how?
In that if there are more kittens coming into ACC, that means they're not perishing on the streets as we were fearing.
one would hope, but some are still perishing on the streets, so.
Understand. So what is your take on this increase in?
I would say, I would go back to our database system can be ornery.
Yeah.
But we will make every effort to obtain the data that would find useful.
Right.
I would say I wouldn't, in the fact that you don't have any data to support whether the kittens come in with their moms or not, that I don't know where that data comes from, 124 more. And then is it compared, like maybe the year before there were more at that time of year, maybe they come in earlier, maybe they come in later. I wouldn't, it doesn't seem that.
You did not find that comforting?
No.
You can't look
I-
at
Well, time for 2 years.
I find it sort of the opposite, actually, because if you have a robust TNR program, you should be seeing a gradual decrease in the feral cat population. So if she's saying 124 more kittens came in over the same period, same months as last year, that would indicate that, assuming these are feral cats, that that this new policy is not working at all, that they're breeding more cats out there in the wild. That seems to be the, that.
Yeah, and you can think, like, every litter, every cat, I mean, a mom cat can have up to 3 to 8 or 9 kittens, so it can pretty easily come up with 124 kittens of kids that have been abandoned outside, right? I don't have a calculator and I can't do the math in my head right now, but you can figure it out.
I just don't see where having more kittens come in is comforting. I mean, if you love kittens, that's great, but if we're talking about feral cats, we're hoping to see a gradual decrease, or at least not an increase in the feral population. So this sounds like an increase.
And a big issue to me is that people that are working directly with them all the time, the lifeblood of these organizations, they're asking for the data and the kind of reasoning behind it, and we're getting reasoning that actually is counterintuitive. And to me, if there's a history so far that we've seen of ACC and SPCA not really working with them, we can't expect or have good faith that they're going forward, they're going to actually really engage with them. I believe at the last meeting, the SPCA did create some sort of a committee that they actually told the people what policy they were going to make, and they didn't really take a lot of their opinions into consideration. So, and there's a couple things in our letter that weren't even responded to, and I think that at the end of the day, we need this data to be divided out more so we can have an understanding, and the root of all of this is we want to understand why this policy is being changed to begin with. And I mean, the people in the room have a lot more knowledge than me, but I don't understand why this policy change was even made to begin with, or why they're not taking more time to make this a really good research study in general to back it up. Because all of us, I'm sure everyone in this room wouldn't be concerned about this if they were given logical reasoning that they could follow in a methodology that someone else could validate. And that's what's concerning, is because we're being forced fed and we're told that they're the experts. Yes. But there's also experts in this room. They don't need a piece of paper that someone paid for to back that up. And so at the end of the day, this is really concerning to me that this is even the letter, and we're supposed to feel better about this, because now I'm a little bit more confused that we're being fed data that doesn't make sense.
Rachel, you mentioned you were talking about the SPCA's guiding coalition, I believe. You said there was a thing at the SPCA. I was actually on that commission. There was only about 5 or 6 of us. Megan McCain was on it, or still is, I think. She's here in the room. And what it looked to me like at the guiding coalition meetings that we had, one of which was with Jennifer Scarlett in attendance, it just seemed to be a thing that they tried to make us think that we were having our opinions taken into consideration. But in fact, they were telling us what was going to be done. They weren't asking us what do we think about what's going to be done.
And that's concerning, because we're in San Francisco and everybody here is very, very intelligent. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a problem with people if you don't give us logical explanations to things. At the end of the day, I mean, that's why you're all concerned, because this doesn't make sense. And it's not a small group of people, this is a large group of people. And I'm sure people who aren't in attendance that are very concerned about this.
Right. Yes, thank you.
Do other commissioners have questions? Because at this point, I think we'd like to, in the interest of time, we don't want to, I remember more than one person mentioned last meeting that they got to get home and take care of their cats. So in the interest of time, I've asked that if the public wants to comment at this point, we will keep comment period, 2 minutes. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead, please. Yes. No, I'm sorry, go ahead, yes, and then we'll do public comment.
Very quickly, just looking down, you brought it up as well, and hopefully this is something that you can clarify. The really thing that jumped out at me, most of the letter was the term untenable, and you brought it up as well. Hopefully you can clarify what an untenable situation is, because it seems like all of these situations are untenable.
That's an excellent question. I think we could say that you might have substituted unsafe, perhaps, for untenable. A bad situation, in other words. Well,
I know what the word means,
yeah.
but I just don't know how
well,
one can make that assessment in this situation, or what basis the assessment is made in this situation. So
yeah,
what is an untenable enough situation to contact the phone?
Right. It cannot be assessed over the phone, I can tell you that for a fact, because the person on the other end of the line, somebody calls up and says, hey, I found kittens, they probably don't know anything. You know, even if you ask them a dozen questions, really good questions, the answers you're going to get are not necessarily going to be very helpful. That's why you need an experienced trapper to go to the situation and boots on the ground, see what's going on there. But that's exactly what they refuse to do.
Yeah, that's I said that's why I hope you can get that clarified at your meeting.
Well, let's not hold our breath.
Yeah, I actually also wanted to comment because these two letters raised more issues for me than they actually answered. Certain things popped out at me as well, and I'm wondering, you know, this is more a question of, do we have the opportunity to follow up on these letters with Director Donahue and Dr. Scarlett? Because to me, these letters were non-responsive. Our letter was very clear. We asked about 3 things. We asked about data. No additional data was given. We asked about communication and trust issues. I don't see anything in these letters addressing that. And about the process plan, there's nothing in the letters addressing that either. And there's a kind of tone in the letter that says, you know, they're the experts, but the people here have been volunteering for 20 years and they're also experts. So to me,
the veterinarians that they referred to in the letter are definitely experts in veterinary medicine. No question about that. Okay?
Yes.
This is not veterinary medicine. This is feral cat management. Totally different. It's like the difference between an orthopedic surgeon and a physical therapist. They do totally different things, even though there's some similarities in the subject matter they work with.
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so what opportunity does the commission have to?
Well, I think what I'd like to do is do public comment, and then the commission can talk about what we think our next steps should be. Any other commissioner comments at this point? Okay, so again, I would say we would like to,
Can I ask one quick question? My understanding before the last meeting was that the commission advised the board of supervisors, and
yeah.
not true?
Yes.
Well, you sent letters to Scarlett Donahue, and I don't know whether you're planning on making any recommendations to the board of supervisors or not. I'm just curious about that.
Well, that's going to be the next step, but we'd like to get the public the opportunity to comment now, and then we'll talk about our next step.
Thank you so much.
So if you would, we will limit comments to 2 minutes. I'll put that little timer on here, so if you would like to go ahead, please, with your comment.
We've started my 2 minutes. My name is Dr. Mark Lemire. I've lived in San Francisco for 20 years. I volunteered at both SPCA and ACC. And I think I can tell you why they've changed the policy the way that they have is because they've chosen the metric of time in foster to determine whether or not their plan is working. And when a person calls in and says, I've got a bunch of baby kitties and a mom here that are going to be easy to catch, and they're told, call us back in 4 weeks, well, right away, that's 4 weeks right off the front of time in foster, and it makes that number look a lot better. At the same time, on the back end, instead of keeping the cats in foster for 8 weeks like they've been doing for decades, now all of a sudden we're getting cats that are 6 weeks old coming out for adoption. They're these little tiny kittens. They don't even know how to play with the string. It's heartbreaking to see them in the cage. Some of them all by themselves. And they're so small, they don't know what to do, but it takes 2 weeks off the back end of time and shelter. And that's the metric that you're going to see when ACC gives you their report at the end of kitten season. The biggest thing I think you're going to see is time in shelter, because Ms. O'Neill said last month that was one of the measures that they were using. That and other things, she said. I watched the video the other day. So that's why they're doing it. That's my time?
Thank you.
Oh, man.
Doctor. We'll see you next
Have
time.
Have you guys seen this?
No.
None of you?
Would you hand it to Commissioner Tobin and we'll pass it around? Next speaker, please.
Is that to be on the record? It goes along.
Go ahead, please.
I'm not finished. I'm going to keep talking.
You have 2 minutes, so everyone else.
Everyone has 2 minutes, sir. We were
Sorry.
here until almost 10
Mark,
o'clock last night.
Mark.
We really need to respect everyone's time.
It's not fair to give one person more time.
Thank you.
If
Yeah, but that's
if you
the
want to
most
talk about
important
some
thing.
other comment, you'll have time at the end of the meeting for open comment, just like at the beginning of the meeting.
Hi, my name is Sally Pena again. I just have a couple of comments and observations. It seems to me that the ACC keeps terrible, terrible records, and something should be done about that. Secondly, it's absolutely unconscionable that the ACC would target black cats and put less out on the floor so that they have a diversity of cats, because that is following an old myth that black cats are dangerous. It's like witches. I have a black cat that I adopted. And I just think it's absolutely unconscionable that they do that, and it needs to be stopped. And the third thing I'd like to say is I think this commission should write a letter to the ACC and back to Virginia Donahue requesting more information and requesting clarification on the other issues that she did not address. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Stuart Wilbur. Thank you for this hearing. I was hearing Commissioner, I haven't got my glasses, Tanofsky, very warmly encouraging the representatives of the volunteer community to interface with ACC and try to get these issues adjusted. I'm certainly on board with that, but what I'm really concerned about is what is the role of this commission in terms of making things happen.
Amen.
You know, because I've heard enough tonight. I came here pretty much ignorant of this issue tonight. I've heard enough to convince me that not giving, you know, that this change in policy kind of reminds me of President Trump's policy towards immigrants. You know, ignore them and maybe they'll go away and die. Sorry to bring the T word into the room, but it really reminds me of that. So let's get back to being humane, at least for the kitties. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Arlene Seen, and I was a cat rescuer for over 20 years. And I want to thank you for the letter that you submitted to these agencies. Perfectly, I agree with.
Use the microphone, please.
I'm trying.
Wrong one.
Oh, I'm so short.
Oh.
Okay. My name's Arlene Seen. I was a cat rescuer for over 20 years. And thank you for the letter that you sent to the agencies. I feel ultimately that this may be an issue that needs to go to the Board of Supervisors. I find it appalling that organizations that all of us rely on, the entire city, has taken such a dangerous stand. And the letter, now I don't have the letter from the SBC, the letter you received from ACC, I think they talk a lot about, they have professional, they're relying on professional opinions, and again, I feel like we're not being taken seriously because we don't have the degrees and we're not being paid, and but we have boots on the ground and we have decades of experience and thousands of cats that we've saved combined, and not even all the rescue people are here, of course. Speaking of experts, when I first found a homeless family, my veterinarian, who worked for decades, a clinic has been open for decades here, told me, get those kittens in the mom right away. Okay, so this is, different professionals have different opinions, but I feel we're not being taken seriously because we don't have these degrees, and yet we have all the experience. And I just feel animals will die if this continues. So I thank you for having the hearings and and your wise remarks. And I really feel, and maybe you can answer this about bringing this, if it can't be resolved any other way, to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us again today. I'm Fanny Avnakis, and I'm speaking on behalf of ACC volunteer Elva Granat. She socializes challenging cats. Many of these cats have been labeled unadoptable by the SPCA and ACC, but many of them now live happy lives as cherished pets. In the Advisory Commission's letter dated June 20th, the Commission made recommendations to ACC. There is no evidence that ACC has followed these recommendations. For example, in rooms away from public view, comfortable cat beds are disappearing and being replaced with sterile plastic transport carrier boxes. Volunteers were not asked for input or even told that this was going to occur. Boxing cats in these plastic carrier boxes, these plastic boxes hinders socialization in various ways. More adult cats now choose to lie next to or in their litter boxes. Kittens don't get the positive experience of comforting bedding, and this can interfere with litter box training. Hiding behind their plastic boxes prevents kittens and cats from viewing and adjusting to the new environment. The carrier boxes also prevent them from observing volunteers interact with other cats. This policy keeps the cat from getting comfortable in their new environment and impairs their socialization. Increasingly, cats and kittens seem to be treated more like inconvenient commodities rather than live animals who deserve humane care. As capacity for care is implemented, I see less actual care and consideration toward the cats and the volunteers. Everything seems tailored toward the convenience of staff members, while causing new obstacles for volunteers as they struggle to socialize cats under increased time constraints and misguided, counterproductive new protocols. Rather than training their staff to handle scared or feral cats and kittens, the two largest animal shelters in San Francisco have opted to leave more and more cats and kittens outside to fend for themselves. Please reinstate the policies that have successfully decreased the feral cat population in this city. The UC Davis studies are not relevant to our city. While this policy stalemate continues, kittens and cats are dying. I would like to, if I have a moment, I'd like to make some comments on my own behalf.
Yes, go ahead.
I know we're being encouraged to work with ACC and SPCA. Unfortunately, there's a culture problem where we are told what to do, and we are very rarely listened to, in my experience and others' experience. As far as the new shelter goes, there was no volunteer input. What they asked for was volunteer input on the art in the shelter. There are no sinks planned for the cat area. There are no feral nurseries planned for the cat area in this huge, new, expensive shelter, and I find that unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janice Kendall. former SPCA volunteer, currently an ACC volunteer, cat guardian and cat lover. I've been following all this with a lot of these people, and it's really upsetting what's going on. Knowing that a homed cat has an average lifespan of 13 to 18 years, a managed colony cat has an average lifespan of 5 years,
Not true.
and a cat totally on its own has an average lifespan of 2 years. Kittens under 6 months have a slim chance of surviving to adulthood. And what I hope for is the following, that ACC connect all residents reporting kittens immediately with a volunteer trapper. ACC should include their own experienced volunteers and cat rescue groups in developing a plan for any specific homeless cat or kitten. And ACC should acknowledge the reports from experienced fosters that homeless and feral mom cats do well in a quiet foster home. And ACC should acknowledge that leaving kittens outside is quite possibly a death sentence. ACC should investigate how other shelters in the Capacity for Care program are successfully using foster homes to increase capacity and reduce length of stay in the shelter. And this is one of the things that's been striking me most, is I've gone out to look at the Maddie's funds programs, the Million Cat Challenge, the Capacity for Care videos, and they're not following the recommendations at all. The Treehouse Humane Society states that sending cats to foster allows us to keep helping animals even when shelter space is limited. They were a featured speaker for the Maddie's Fund's Million Cat Challenge and Capacity for Care, and they claim to have 100 foster homes available. This quote I have from Dr. Hurley in this same video says, "Try it for yourself, just as a pilot. Drop the number of cats, keep the rest of the cats off-site, and foster care, you can always bring them back, see how it works." They don't talk about dumping kittens outside. Thank you.
Hi, Nadine May, cat trapper and rescuer and foster or whatever. I'm actually continuing with Janice's talk here because she didn't have enough time. So the end of that paragraph, speaking about Maddie's Fund, was the SPCA's approach appears to be leave more cats and kittens outside. The next point is ACC should ensure their veterinarian and shelter staff have an appropriate level of training in handling scared cats and kittens. ACC should identify any veterinary and shelter staff that view homeless cats as wildlife and ensure they have no further involvement in the outcomes of any cats. These are the people that are making the decisions about life and death decisions for cats. ACC should acknowledge that the SPCA has pushed out many experienced cat staff and volunteers, including me, and no longer operates a reputable community cat program. The SPCA's instinct to fire volunteers instead of respecting their knowledge indicates their basic animosity toward cats. Last but not least, ACC can allow SPCA to continue moving cats into their adoption program, but must ask that SPCA do something to address the housing of cats in shelter kennels that are very near barking dogs. And my own comments, I thank those of you who expressed concern and doubts about the letters from SPCA and ACC. Personally, I'm going to go so far as to say that they are untrue. I will repeat the statistics for the SPCA Moms and Kittens Nursery for 4 years. When the mothers and kids were well taken care of, there was a 0% mortality rate, and the kittens had a mortality rate of less than 2%. Less than 2%. Thank you.
Sorry, I left this up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Patricia Briggs, and I hope I didn't say this last time. I can't remember what I said, but anyway, I think Rocky and Maria were just totally right on target as far as the mothers and kittens. situation goes. I mean, the people in the trenches really know the story as opposed to the people that talk that are always going to meetings. And anyway, my concern is, as well as the kittens and the moms, that hasn't been talked about, is their policy of telling people, again, not to feed these cats. And the original cat from Egypt was, from the desert. He was a solitary animal. And when we domesticated these animals, we basically destroyed them. We took away their wildness. I mean, the SPCA, someone said, I forgot what her name was, Jenny Zoe or something. I don't know her, but actually she told me on the phone, she said that these are wild animals, even the wildest of the wild. And I've done recovery for some cats that were all degrees of tameness. Some of them were really the wildest of the wild, but still they are domesticated animals. And it's really a betrayal of them to, take them, when we domesticated them, we took them in, we were responsible for their feeding, their housing, and even their reproductive health. And so to betray them and now say don't feed them, and as the lady was saying, the cats that are inside homes, that are pets, they live 13 to 18 years. The cats are in a managed colony, live 5 years. And the poor cats that are on their own, they live 2 years. And another problem that we really have here, and it's never talked about, and I'm saying this because we've lived in San Francisco for 58 years, we have never had a car by choice. The car situation has reached a crisis level here, and just this past month, July the 10th, we lost our Elmo to a car. And it's personal now. I just, you have these Uber and Lyft cars, and they are killing so many of these cats. Anyway, so I'd like to see what the SPCA is going to say. They're not talking about, the updated situation about feeding them or not feeding them. Thank you.
Hi, my name again is Julie Johnson, and I have been a feral cat volunteer for over 10 years, both at the SPCA and ACC, and I completely concur with what Maria and Rocky said in terms of just the knowledge that they shared, and also the many, many decades of experience that are in this room, probably more than 500 years of experience in this room. I also wanted to point out that the data presented in the letter was also very misleading. The combination of the DOA and the DIK, the diet in the kennel, and the euthanasia, those have to be pulled out because that is completely misleading. But I want to touch on something else. So, I'm really concerned that this whole capacity for care management model is just another one of their trendy programs that they're doing in animal care and welfare. And it really bothers me. I'm a scientist by training, and I'm an associate dean for research, so I think about research all of the time. And I actually had some time to go and look into some of the articles about capacity for care. And the first thing that I noticed, it has nothing to do with feral kitten programs. Zero. It has to do with changing the size of the cages, identifying targets for lengths of stays, has nothing to do with feral kittens. So I'm having a really hard time connecting feral kitten abandonment in the community with this whole capacity for care model. In addition to that, almost all of the studies that I reviewed, including ones that were published in veterinary journals, are all observational studies. And the reports that they come out with several agencies are just case studies. These are not really true scientifically designed studies. There's no control groups. And in fact, I would argue that these are incredibly biased authors. And for those of you in the audience, you may remember Dr. Hurley about 8 years ago was up here presenting. And she talked about, she gave us the cereal box analogy of overcrowding in shelters. And to me, she's been on this soapbox for a long time. And I don't think they are unbiased in this. And I would demand that they actually provide us with the research that they're basing this on. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk directly to you. I'm here because it's very personal. I directly benefited from the knowledge of expert trappers in these organizations. Last fall, a feral cat mom and her kitten showed up in our yard, and I was unable to trap them myself, and it was really important that we do it because one of the kittens was very badly injured with a horribly broken leg. Mom had an abscess, and a very expert trapper from one of these organizations came out to our yard, assessed the situation, taught me how to use traps, and the 4 kittens, I took them in, socialized them. They are the best pets ever. I just want to say that. And Mom was released to our yard, lives out there. These cats would not have been alive if it were not for the expert help of this person. And as a result of this discussion, what I did was I wrote to everybody. I wrote to my supervisor. I wrote to all of the people recommended, and got a canned response from Dr. Scarlett from the SPCA that gave a link at the bottom from UC Davis. And I'm glad that the question of research came up, because I tracked down every single link in the canned response. And here's what I found. The change in policy looks like it is based on incredibly flawed and subjective interpretations of opinions. They're not based on fact. And I'm happy to provide the link so that you can check this out yourself. The first item states, UC Davis, that there's absolutely no data to support tracking of kittens after they're weaned, but then recommends doing it anyway. The next item is a study about whether single or group housing is less stressful for cats. And it turns out of all of the cats studied, only 13 of those cats were feral cats, not socialized to people. 13 is an absurdly small sample size. You cannot draw accurate conclusions from that. But if you did, what you'd find out is that they were only slightly more stressed. There were an average amount of stress compared to the socialized cats. There was statistically no difference between the level of stress between the socialized and the unsocialized cats. The next item found that...
Thank you, that's your time, I'm sorry.
That's 2 minutes?
Yeah, that was 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for listening.
I'm 84 years old now, and about 20 years ago, I did start working for the SPCA, the Cat Neuter Spay program, and at that time we had no other support except that the SPCA did kindly give us, free spay neuter. But otherwise, we're completely on our own. There was no, and if you found a mother cat with kittens, well, that was really all on our own. I mean, we just had to scramble to find out where we could keep them. And usually it was in our own apartments or something like that. So it was really hard. So when, then later I became physically not well, and also other reasons, I left the sort of basically animal welfare kind of activities, and I wasn't participating. And then just recently I received this petition from the animal people saying that they wanted to reinstate this program. And I was terribly moved when I looked at the program that they wanted to reinstate, because it was just about a wish list of everything that we would have wanted to have happen at that time, 20 years ago. And now it's happened. But unfortunately, I was terribly shocked to find that when I learned that it happened, it was taken away again. I mean, it was, changed. And I'm still shocked as why these two organizations would do a thing like that. But for this last meeting and this meeting, it seems to me that we ordinary people of San Francisco are so far not able to change the mindset of the heads of the San Francisco SPCA. So therefore, I urge everyone here to write to our district supervisors to ask them to insist that the San Francisco ACC continue the humane policy towards homeless mother cats and their nursing kittens. And that the new building the ACC is building, or has built, I'm not quite sure what it is, includes facilities to accommodate this great work.
Thank you.
One commissioner at the last meeting reminded us that about 15 years ago, both the San Francisco Animal Commission and Board of Supervisors voted to support the concept that henceforth the owners of companion animals should be viewed as guardians and not owners, and that animals were their wards. And the program the ACCA was carrying out regarding these animals embodied this concept.
I'm sorry, that's your 2-minute time.
So that's why I'm asking, because so we don't have the ability to do anything about what the SPCA does, but we do have the ability to ask our city agency, ACC, and actually it's been great.
That was 2 minutes. Thank you.
They were really great all these past years that I've known them, and I'm sure they want to do that. I'm the ordinary people there. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Susie Grimley, and I want to thank everybody that there's any trafficking, volunteering, helping, and fostering, and adopting cats. It's a lot of hard work. And I want to say that the meeting on June 20th, where animal care and control, along with the San Francisco SPCA speakers, left me feeling as if they just kept going around and around in circles, not answering the questions, and still things seem to be not getting settled. So maybe we need to step up and go a bit further and get our supervisors involved. If animal control and San Francisco SPCA does not want to cooperate on this very important issue, I feel every life saved is precious and every animal is special, and that includes feral, semi-feral, and most especially mother cats and their kittens. Thank you.
Thank
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Mitchell Schoenbrunn, resident of San Francisco over 40 years, cat lover. I just have a couple things I want to mention. I want to follow up for my friend, Dr. Mark Lemaire. What he was trying to express is the packets you get handed at animal control, and he would like to know who's paying for this leaflet, which apparently is advertising a family business of Ms. Donahue. He's curious to know if there's a conflict of interest involved. The other thing I want to say is just very anecdotal. I have, for the first time, I'm fostering a small kitten in my basement. He's been there a week or so. He came in, we weighed him 2.7 pounds. He was rejected from one of these organizations. They were going to put him back on the street. Within one day, I was petting him, he was purring, he was running around. So my point is, there's something nefarious going on here. Something very nefarious, and I hope that at the end of this process, we'll have shed some light on why these kinds of things are going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello there. My name is Van Housman. I am a longtime SF resident since 1978 and a cat lover for a couple of decades now as well. Just have a couple of questions to pose. First is, why are these agencies working so hard to keep volunteers from helping animals in need? Doesn't make sense. I don't understand why they're doing it. And why do volunteers need to work so hard to make these agencies do their jobs? Thank you.
Oh, that was an excellent point. Hi, Linda Yacobucci. I need to make some corrections, and I hope Ms. Donahue's statement in the San Francisco Chronicle was corrected. Feral cats are not going to kill people. I hope that was taken out. Somebody, I hope. Dr. O'Neill, I hope somebody made that correction. That is just an outrageous statement. And also that you commented last month that feral cats are decimating the bird cat population. It's so not true. I'm so tired of hearing it. Please look up Peter Wolf, Vox Felina, and you will see a lot of studies that he has debunked. He is now working for Best Friends. That's how good he is. The other one is that feral cats live outside long lives. They do not live 5 and 2 years. We've had them 20 years old in managed colonies. I fixed a colony that was being fed, not fixed. They were all 10 years old. So I mean, I have fixed over 600 feral cats in my life. I work with obviously thousands of cats, and I'm actually a great statistic. And these people and those letters were extremely disrespectful to me, and they just show the continuation of the disrespect they have had for us. Ever since Mr. Abbazino left, that left. The respect for the feral cat team left. I was one of the first members of the cat team when Mr. Abbazino was here, and he listened to us. He changed things for us. Mr. Sayers slowly decimated everything, and Jan and Dory did the same thing. In fact, I probably was one of the first volunteers kicked out of the SPCA because I spoke negatively in public. You now have to sign an agreement with the SPCA. You will not speak negatively in public with San Francisco SPCA. Oh, it's just so frustrating. I am not optimistic. I'm extremely pessimistic. And for the SPCA vet last month to say this is not a budgetary item is just outrageously so untrue. This is all about money. That's all the SPCA cares about is collecting money. They never listen to us. There are no consequences. They will never listen to us. We are nobody, and they have no respect. Dr. Scarlett killed a socialized feral cat at one point. We were willing to take this cat out of the shelter, bring it back. It wasn't feeding, and eating, and doing well in the shelter. We know how to take care of these cats.
That's your time.
She preferred killing this cat than giving it to us. That's the attitude that the SPCA has.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? No more further public comment? Okay, so we will get back then to commissioners. Does anyone would like to talk about next steps? Does anyone have any recommendations for next steps?
I wanted to know.
Public comment is over.
Oh, sorry, no, it's a question.
Yeah, no, public comment is over.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
I didn't realize
There will be an
that.
opportunity at the end of the meeting for public
Yes.
comment on issues not on the agenda this evening.
No, I
Thank you.
misunderstood what you were talking about. Sorry.
Commissioners?
Yeah, let's send another letter to the ACC telling them the letter was unacceptable and didn't answer anybody. On top of that, I think we should probably, it's unfortunately the timing issue is we really need to know what happens at this meeting at the end of the month because we don't have another meeting until August, the end of August. But I think in the meantime, we might want to consider sending a letter to the Board of Supervisors as well.
What do you propose we recommend to the Board of Supervisors? Express our unhappiness or ask them to take action? What? And I'm not asking, I'm asking, everyone on the commission, not just you.
I think just explain the situation, that this is what's going on. We're, in a sense, reaching out to them because we're trying to do our job as a commission and work with the public and work with the city agency and trying to get the Board of Supervisors to push our recommendations along or get to ACC work more in conjunction with our volunteers or be more open with our volunteers. Just all of the asks that we're asking the ACC, I guess, just express our concerns to them and the concerns of the volunteers.
I think we could also highlight that, it at least seems from these letters, and maybe there'll be better follow-up, but they're not, at least they don't seem to think that they have to answer to this commission.
They don't. they don't, we're not that's sort of the crux of it. We do not oversee animal care and control. So in fact, they really don't have to respond to this commission. They do have to respond to the Board of Supervisors.
Which is why we should send a letter.
Right.
So then maybe we can ask the Board of Supervisors to ask for that accountability. I also think that there should be a follow-up to the SPCA, because I understand that it's a privately run organization, but to say that there is no accountability or oversight or transparency over a city organization that, you know, operates in the city with the consent of the city and people in the city, I think that's just incorrect.
And it's a public, it's nonprofits though, so we can look into information. But beyond just making the recommendation that the Board of Supervisors should be aware of this, we should see if maybe they'll support us with finding this data and really getting clarity.
Well, I understood that Animal Care and Control was going to return to us with more data at the end of the season, which now we're getting close to the end of the season. Is that right?
There should be years worth of data.
Well into the fall.
We don't have data. Not real data.
I mean, we have the word from ACC. We have their word that they are collecting data and that they will disclose that information. I personally don't want to ask the Board of Supervisors to ask for data that ACC has promised us. I think that's redundant.
I feel like there's a larger issue though, because there's data issues with a lot more than that. I feel like over the past year, we've heard about lots of instances with data issues, even that grand jury report that came out a few months ago. So I feel like this is actually a larger issue than we're even making it at this moment. But in terms of licensing and reporting from private vets, I mean, this is a bigger issue with data.
Oh, for sure there is.
In making informed policy decisions and kind of what is the Board of Supervisors' oversight and responsibility when different entities of our city government are making decisions and they can't back them up very well. That's a problem. I mean, I feel like that is kind of what our job is to make that recommendation that we're concerned that this public policy is being made without the right information. And just bringing that to making sure they're aware of it.
Could I make a comment on that?
No, sorry, public comment is over.
At the end.
Go ahead,
Well, I
Dina.
was just going to follow up to say that, like, you know, responding to a few points in a letter is not a big ask. And so to not receive that, I mean, I think that we do have to take this one step further.
Well, okay, so what specifically are we saying that they did not respond to? As I stated, I saw that they came back to us with what limited data they have so far on this kitten season, and ACC acknowledges that their tracking of this information is inadequate and needs work. So I'm all for asking them for information that they have that they've not disclosed, but I'm not seeing that that is the case on this.
It is an issue though, because we have the DOA, the DIK, and the euthanasia. That's all just lumped into one group.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's a concern. And to see what's the data even from 2016. You know, to me, this is just 2 marker points. Can we get a few more?
Right.
Or just to understand a little bit more about how the process works when they are making changes like this, because that seems not transparent. In the issue about, we did mention something about volunteers mentioning that they were silenced. That wasn't responded to at all. And we don't know kind of the validity of that, but that's really important because there should be no nonprofit or government agency silencing anyone in that regard. So that's another issue. I mean, a lot of this seems exploratory. We need more information.
Yes, and I feel that we've been promised more information as it comes. But if we want to say, write a letter to the Board of Supervisors, I am listening to what that would ask. I personally am not going to write a board, I'm not going to sign off on a letter to the Board of Supervisors demanding more data when ACC has said they have problems in collecting their data. This came up in the tethering example, that their database is just inadequate when it comes to certain things. Now, I agree, it's surprising that you can't differentiate between an animal that comes in dead and an animal that you kill. That seems a little bit strange to me, but nevertheless, I don't know. I take, while I agree that the letter from ACC does not address all the issues, I do take it as a first good faith measure in communicating not only with the commission, but also with the volunteers in setting up a meeting. And granted, I understand that many people in this room would argue that that meeting is months too late. Nevertheless, it is a response to the request to engage more with the volunteers. So I don't want to send a letter to the Board of Supervisors saying that they're not doing a good job of communicating when Sherry O'Neill, Dr. O'Neill from Animal Care and Control, when she spoke at our last meeting, she acknowledged that there were problems in the communication and that they were going to be addressed. So, so for myself, and we're a board, so we need to vote on this, but those are two issues that I'm not comfortable stating in a letter to the Board of Supervisors, that we need more data, or that we need to see changes in the communication policy, because at least, you know, we'll see, and of course we expect to see this again on the agenda to monitor these things, but I feel that the letter, while inadequate in some areas, is a good first step.
The issue though is bigger than this, because if we don't have good data coming in, then we can't make any informed decision about any public policy related to animals in general across the board. I think we should alert the Board of Supervisors that the data issues and collecting data is a lot bigger than we know. And any time that we, for the last 2 years that I've been here, it always goes back to we don't have enough data, we don't have the right data. So why would we not advocate that we need to make changes with that that are transparent? And then I'm not talking about communication between volunteers, I'm talking about how are policy decisions made? Is there a threshold of how much data? Is there a threshold of how much qualitative and quantitative information? That's more, that we don't really have an idea of how that's made. But the larger issue is every issue that we've really had come to us for the last 2 years, it comes back to ACC doesn't keep the data. Well, we should address that as a board to the supervisors, that they, you know, it's just like the capacity of care. If your capacity of care is only this much, so you're only doing this much, then we have to lobby and advocate to widen that. Because that's literally our job. You know, it's not to go, oh, well, we can only do that, so that's good enough. It's to go, what can we advocate for to make it better? And we, as a board, can say, hey, Board of Supervisors, these are the issues that I came up over the past, you know, couple of years, and we don't feel like there's adequate data being collected, and we need to figure out how we can support ACC to gather data so we can all make informed decisions, and then so everyone can feel like it's a little bit more transparent. You know, I mean, we can make it about this, just this issue, or we can make it about a larger...
Well, I think we need to address, I mean, as you say, the data gathering and dissemination is an ongoing issue, and it just came up with the dog licensing. We have decided... And tethering.
Every issue.
Every issue.
I would argue.
So I don't see the point in sort of lumping all the data issues into one letter and just overwhelming the Board of Supervisors. I think the responsible thing to do for our commission is to point out where the specific inadequacies are and ask that they be addressed. So I think that asking for accountability from the tax collector and ACC on the licensing numbers is a great start. I think that the tethering measures is another start. But I'm not going to write a letter. I'm not going to sign a letter to the Board of Supervisors telling them that ACC has inadequate data collection, because
they do.
But why? Because at the end of the day, if we don't alert them and we wait 6 months to finally, after we feel like we have enough information, we got to get on the radar of the Board of Supervisors that these are even an issue to begin with, because we're just ignoring the fact that we should probably even monthly be sending recommendations to them or something, you know what I mean? Because we're really not communicating with the Board of Supervisors as much as we can in a formal capacity. And this is kind of, we don't have to open the floodgates and Pandora's box for everything, but I think it's important for us to mention just baseline that this is something that's a reoccurring issue that they should have on the radar for future correspondence.
Absolutely, it's certainly something that we can mention and allude to and lay it out there, and then more specifically say, in this very instance right here, this is how that overall lack of transparency, over lack of quality data affects this one issue. I think it's something that we need to say.
Getting on our radar, I think getting on our radar as well, like maybe the Board of Supervisors can help the ACC resolve these data issues if it's lack of funding or resources. Right now, it seems like many things are not on their radar at all, so.
I agree that a letter is definitely needed. I think maybe for the biggest bang for our buck, though, that we should not only have in that letter a summary of our problems that we've uncovered in the last 2 months, i.e. mainly the inability of the organizations and volunteers involved to be able to work together for the best results in everybody's effort. But also our data collection needs to be improved, and I think when we write a letter to the Board of Supervisors, we not only need to acknowledge these problems, but have a plan as far as how data collection might be better collected. And I think that maybe next month's meeting, if we understand that we have established these 2 prior issues of not being able to work together, not having data collection, and having all of the genius minds in this room come back with some ideas on how to go forward, especially since we'll have the meeting between now and then where volunteers and ACC have one last chance to sort of get on the same page. And I think by next month's meeting, we should be able to talk about an actual recommendation for plans when we write this letter to the supervisors.
Yeah, I have a comment on that too. I don't think our role is to actually recommend how an organization operates, but it's fair to say we can recommend when we see flaws in the operations of an organization. And I would rather take the tone of that, and that stems from something you said, Rachel, earlier, which is that there was a civil grand jury report in which it was indicated that ACC had data that was flawed, and that they were working towards fixing this. And there were recommendations that they did do that in the civil grand jury. So, because of that, it's fair to say that the Board of Supervisors, we still think this is a problem. We still think it needs looking into further. And this is how it's manifesting itself in these various ways. We can't pinpoint, I think just saying, I'm sorry, it's not so much about the one issue, it's about the bridge, the source of the issue. And so your outcome is part of that flaw in the issue, or flaw in the operations. So I'm okay with the letter to the Board of Supervisors saying this is a follow-up to the civil grand jury report. We'd like to see some improvements in this. We're not seeing it yet, and act. It's their responsibility. I don't want to wash my hands of it, but I say we have limitations, so I want to work within our limitations.
I think exactly what you're saying, I agree with what you're saying, but that leads to, here's the overall issue, and here is where it's manifesting itself.
Yeah, right.
Especially right here, right now, here's a very complicit, very concrete example of where this issue is happening. And
I
we have
agree.
30 people in this room who are experiencing that very issue.
I agree.
And a commission that is continually experiencing that.
I agree. I think if we point to the grand jury report stating that there's a lack of data collection and distribution, and that it manifests itself, just a great example of how it has manifested. I would, however, argue that if we when we send a letter to the Board of Supervisors, we should acknowledge that ACC did respond to us. They did. We can argue whether it was adequate or not, but as Jane so well put it, she's hoping that the volunteers and ACC and SPCA SPCA are able to use this opportunity to work better moving forward. And I feel that the response, the fact that we got a letter in response from ACC was, showed that they take the issue seriously, that they're respectful of our role as a commission, and I think that should be acknowledged.
You can definitely acknowledge their response, but certainly point out their deficiencies in their response, which are pretty vast.
Can I just make one comment? I have no decision-making capability of what you guys want to do or not, but just in general, a comment about the data collection. I mean, I've been there almost 5 years, and this has been something that's been in the works for that entire time. And the Chameleon system does collect a lot of data. The problem is pulling it out in a meaningful way. So it's not that it's not there, it's just the matter of having to...
And inputting it, you've said in the past. There might be drop-down boxes and the person, and I wonder, Sherry, if the DOA, and I wonder if that's one of those drop-down.
Right. So if there's more clarification or if there's something that you want to know, just ask for it. I don't think there would be any problem with providing it. It's just it has to come with an explanation of what that means when you're looking at it, like what the DIK means, what those parameters are. And there, you can't pull from free text. So it's just a series of data points, and you have to ask the system what points to collect, and then kind of look at it as a whole to interpret what that means. So, we've hired a consultant who's not inexpensive. This is a very serious thing that Virginia is looking at too. She wants accurate data, of course, we all do. Historically, I think the only thing that we've reported regularly is the statistics at the end of the year, which is life release rate. And I would argue that's not the only metric we should measure by. And this is not an opportunity to talk about capacity for care and length of stay. That's another time and place. But those are also things we're interested in knowing just from a welfare perspective. So it's not all data. Some of it is going to be anecdotal and experiential when we make policy changes and decisions. And I think the data is there in a lot of ways. It's just pulling it out in a meaningful way and understanding the limitations of it and having the opportunity to explain that rather than saying, well, this is inappropriate, inaccurate, not what we want. It's the way you ask the system for the information. Does that make sense? I don't think that it's intentionally being withheld. I think it's the question that you're asking. Same with tethering. Our analyst is working on those questions with the geocoding, but there's only so much that she and one other person that write the reports can do, and that has a lot to do with our capacity for how everyone does their job in the shelter too. So there's no problem with making a request for data. See, there's no barrier to that. And the CAT volunteer meeting is meant to be a monthly, ongoing, looking at it month by month, and then at the end you can go back and look previous years. But as the software has changed and the information has changed, historically that changes things in the past. So then there has to be a correction when you get the new system updated, which we just did an update a couple weeks ago, to correct the historical data so that then it matches up and communicates with them. Do you see what I'm saying? It's complicated. It's not that it's not there. It's just you have to ask the right questions to pull that information. And I say I have no problem with trying to get information when you do that asks for. But it's knowing the right questions. It's not an intentional thing that it's
and how things are
obscure
coded and all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, if it's not as complex as it's being
Absolutely.
And
So I just want to,
but
explain
it's also that when you look at the
complex.
system, it's complex, but it's not as complex as we're really making it. Because these are, we need to figure out what the definitions are and
Absolutely.
then come together. that can happen. We just look at the methodology for how it was
Exactly.
used.
And it's just a different
We have
conversation
base levels.
that, when we have conversations like this and it's mostly focused on one issue, having a conversation about Chameleon software and how that works is a whole different thing.
It's not important.
Of course, absolutely. And it's very important to us too. We want to measure those things. We want to know those things. And I say it's very important to Virginia, and it's just been on the top of her list since I've been there. And again, we've hired consultants and they're working on it. So it's not that it's being ignored. And I think if you want to ask,
absolutely ask, and then the information that comes back, we just have to look at it so that we can tell you what that means. Does that make sense? It's not.
But you also don't want to be told what the data means by other people too. You want to see the raw data and then make some inference on your own. I mean, that's what's more concerning to me is that, you know, like when we first seen the 45%, that just seemed really pulled out of thin air in many ways for people. And kind of getting down to the raw numbers would, I don't know, make people a little more comfortable, you know?
Right. And some of the data needs cleanup, like for example, the age of the animal coming in. People would input it differently. You know, now it's like a forced field. We must put an age in for the animal so that we know if they're underage and that type of thing. So we've made those small changes along the way. Chameleon's not super user-friendly thing, so every time we have a change, you know, it's staff training and all that. I mean, it's a lot. So I just want you guys to know that it's not something that's just left out there not being looked at. And if you need data on a specific issue that we're talking about, that's not a problem. It's just understanding the process we have to go through to pull it.
Yeah, but it makes it concerning that if the data is even valid to begin with. And I think that's where, yeah, and you know, at least me, I'm really concerned about the fact that you guys are working on this on your own. ACC obviously needs some more output or external assistance to figure that out, because it's a 5-year process of trying to figure out how to make the data a little bit more presentable, or because it seems to me a system issue.
Touching different things. Right,
yeah.
So part of it is, I mean, this is the software support helps us, and I say there's a consultant that is doing this work, as well as our analyst and as well as the IT. So, you know, it is several people looking at it from different angles. I mean, it's vastly improved in the last 5 years. It's not perfect, but every time we're like, oh, we should be looking at that too, then we just have to add more detail in what we're capturing. And it's a work in process. I don't want to take up too much time, but just as far as data collection goes, that's what's happening, and I don't think there's any problem with providing anything that's asked for. We just have to look at it as a whole and see, does it seem real? Does that sound real?
But will we have to go back and forth a lot to get those? Because
it depends on the information that you're,
I mean, when we asked what those meant, lumping 3 categories into one, you know, that's a little confusing.
I think, again, it was supposed to be a measure of who gets out. It's a product of the kind of the live release. That's why it's like the ones that don't make it out and the ones that do. That's
I
why
understand that, but I'm more concerned about the fact that those numbers are going to be given back out to people, and that's, I think we should think when we're giving out different data points that we should think about like what is going to be the response from people. Because immediately when I see this first thing is why are these 3 things being lumped into one category, and I don't work in this. So that was concerning me. So I think that ACC needs to think about what numbers they're putting out and what the response is going to be from people as like your audience, because that's going to be really important for rebuttals. You know?
It depends. I mean, it depends on the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, most of that was meant to be for the commissioners, not for the people that have already.
And I'm a commissioner, and I'm confused.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see no reason why follow-up questions or asked data would be an issue. I guess I have the same concerns that I guess.
I know this is a little much to ask, but when we talked about this specifically, as I said, the thing that seems to be missing is this is a feral queen and kitten policy, and this number is not broken down that way, and it's only ACC and it is not SPCA. And I asked this at the last meeting, when you are coming together on a policy, there should be joint numbers that reflect the success or the failure of that policy. And so I did not get that in Dr. Scarlett's letter, and I would hope that because there was such a robust feral cat nursery program that was running and is no longer running, there's a lot of buried data that we can't even begin to assess how well they did prior to this policy change.
Yeah, and that's and that's going to be SPCA data, right?
That's SPCA.
And this gets back to
but if this is a combined policy, a joint policy.
This is what we get every year when we try to do the apples-to-apples comparison of those 2 organizations and the live release rates. So, yeah, so your point is that the numbers should be there, since they had the program in place. But to Sherry's point, you know, the two systems aren't always apple to apple, so it does require some interpretation, right?
Sure, and with the feral cat nursery, and there isn't a lot of data. I think Dr. Valdez spoke to that. It was, that nursery data was kept separate from their shelter data.
Yeah.
And those animals only entered the shelter database after they exited the program. So when we're talking about, you know, 30 cats, that's the information that
SPCA.
SPCA.
Right.
Correct. I mean, that's as far as I'm willing to go on the details, because it's not my data, but that's my understanding, is that that program was completely separate from the rest of the shelter database, so they don't have that to go back to, and a lot of that data disappeared when certain employees left the program. I mean, that's reality.
Yeah, and we have we have nothing on the we can't demand data from the SPCA.
But that's what, I think that's the overarching concern, is that these policy decisions were made without the proper data to inform the decision.
Well, the response of ACC is that the decision was made based on the recommendations of the professionals.
I thought about all of them.
That was the response.
Yeah, I agree with that
And
response.
we might not
That's
agree with it, but there was a response. I just want to be respectful of the ACC that they did respond to the question. So that's.
But that's not a response. That's saying we know best, so be quiet. It is in many ways, because we don't have the data to back it up, and if they don't figure out the feral cats versus the non-feral cats to begin with, they don't have the data to back this policy up. And that is what it comes down to at the end of the day, because they're trying to say this is the best policy, but they can't back up the policy. So it's not about being respectful, it's about being respectful to everyone in society.
No, I want to be respectful, but they answered the question.
But they didn't answer the question. That's not an answer. That's saying I know. That's saying that's being parental. That's parental.
That's saying we don't like the response.
Yeah, but it's more than that. That's not a response. That's not a response.
I disagree. I think they responded maybe inadequately, but I view that as a response. But anyway, that's not the point. Where we are now is what are the next steps? Where are we?
You know where we are. We need to send a letter to the ACC asking them to clarify their response and give us more accurate data. We need to send a letter to the supportive supervisors saying this is what's going on in general with the ACC and their transparency, and this is how it is coming up in exactly this one issue.
Yep.
Are you volunteering to write a letter?
No,
I will.
I didn't bring these issues.
Yeah, I'm not volunteering.
I'm not. I honestly, I'm not
That's
trying
not
to
one
put
of us
work
being
on
here,
someone.
right?
But I think Jane, who brought the issue originally and wrote the first letter to the ACC, should write this.
Well, I wish I could, but
I'm again, sorry to you guys here. I leave tomorrow on vacation. I do not want to delay this. There's a meeting on July 30th, and I'm leaving, and I'm not back until the 28th. That's a significant amount of time that makes it look like we don't care. And
Can we go to that?
No, we can't go to that meeting. You as a commissioner cannot go to that meeting. But who offered to raise?
She can ask if she can go to the meeting. Not as a commissioner, but you can always ask as a member of the, when we.
As a commissioner.
Right, so there's two things.
But you're going as a commissioner, all right?
Well, just again, a procedural thing here is that any of us we can write a letter to our supervisor saying we disagree with this policy as an individual. We have a right to do that. What we're doing here is working as a commission, and that's different. And so I say, if you want to go to that meeting as a member of the public, it sounds like it's only available to volunteers who've been screened and whatever else, but we don't know. But please, we're not going to stand in your way of that.
No, I'm just putting it out there that, how are we supposed to get that information from the June 30th meeting before we grade the letters in general? And do we need that information before we write this letter? I don't think we do.
Who offered to write the letter? Who was it?
I did.
You did? Okay.
I'm sure I can get Nina to help me.
Okay, I will take you two up on writing that letter. You have the letterhead, you have, but.
In the letter you originally wrote. Because we would want to accompany the letters that we receive from ACC and SPCA as well in the packet. You know, I'm all about keeping the letter as light and short as possible, but at the 6 years I've been here, this is a reoccurring issue.
Yeah.
And it's gonna continue to be a reoccurring issue because there's a root cause of this issue. And until we alleviate that, it's gonna be the problem.
The one thing I'll say is I'm not sure it's appropriate to send the SPCA letter to the Board of Supervisors, their response. I'm not sure how the others feel about that.
I think that should be a question we probably ask the city attorney, but it seems to me that
I don't
once
think it's a question for the attorney. I think that, maybe it is a
public
question.
information after it's emailed to us, correct? Because
That is a question for the attorney, probably.
Yeah, that's the question I would have for the attorney, that as soon as
But I am
emails
afraid,
us, it's.
but separately, I'm afraid that when we pose SPCA information to the Board of Supervisors, I feel like maybe that dilutes our message, because we have nothing to say to them. So if we throw that at them, it might compromise our credibility, I think.
I don't think it would compromise credibility because those two organizations are working in unison. And it's
Yeah,
going to come up, I don't think we should
ACC
make it about
answers to the
them.
Board of Supervisors, not SPCA,
Yeah.
that's the only thing. But that's the way I do it, I don't know, maybe
You don't need
Russell has some thoughts on that, whether or not to include that letter. Certainly a copy of the ACC letter, yes.
I would include their letters for information. We asked for a response, they responded to us.
I agree, fair enough.
Okay, so we know the action items right now, letter to the ACC.
And we know the bullet points.
Yes.
We've had issues in the past. This is one example of
That's the
how.
Board of Supervisors.
Oh,
Yeah,
excuse
you were
me.
mentioning ACC.
Excuse me.
So ACC is just clarifying the data points with the DOA, DIK, and the euthanasia.
Feral
Queen, and what is being put in place to gather that data.
I hope that some of you who are going to that meeting on July 30th are also, we're not the boots on the ground, as you said. You have way more idea of what data you would like to see as well too. So
What meeting?
something that's going on July 30th that Virginia mentioned in her meeting. For cat volunteers. For cat volunteers.
Animal Care and Control is hosting a cat volunteer meeting on July 30th.
For ACC cat volunteers?
Yes.
May I provide some
No,
statistics?
I'm sorry, we can't, no.
Oh, you were asking for them.
I'm afraid not. Okay, so on that, should we leave it in the hands of Nina and Rachel to draft a letter? Russell?
No, that's really to ACC. The kind of question I was going to have was, do we want to wait until next month's meeting to see what happens if we can get some feedback from the July 30th meeting before we send a meeting
Or a
letter to
response
the
on
Board
our
of
letter.
Supervisors? I don't think that necessarily matters because our really kind of issue with the Board of Supervisors is an overarching kind of problem with transparency, and this is not a specific issue that we can really point to that's happening right now. So I think sending a letter to the Board of Supervisors now is...
Maybe in your letter to the board, or to the Animal Care and Control, is to ask for a summary of the results of the July 30th meeting. So you can show progress points along the way too. This is what we know so far. These, if there's efforts made to gather that data, to work more closely, more collaboratively with the partners, we'll start to see some progress being made. But if there are more resources needed, it doesn't sound like there are. It's just about honing in on data that's needed. If there are more resources needed, then that's another Board of Supervisors ask.
And I have a question. So for the tone of the BOS letter, we want that to be focusing on just clarification or just more giving them awareness of the overarching transparency issues and then relating how it's manifesting with this? Or are we making an ask or recommendation in that? And what is that? Because from what I've gathered, we were just recommending that the Board of Supervisors either look into data or helping them with resources? What's kind of the focus for that besides just, is it just letting them know that we see this as a recurring issue?
You need to let them know that it's a reoccurring issue and it's hindering our work as a commission.
That's the best wording.
I don't know what specific ask we can bring out.
Okay, that makes sense. And are we in majority agreement that the letter should go out? To the ACWC?
We haven't had a vote on it yet.
So, okay, so let's
still
vote.
discussing.
Does the commission agree that we should send a follow-up letter to Animal Care and Control requesting more clarity on the data that they responded with? Everyone in favor of sending a letter to ACC, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? None. Okay, so we'll do that. And then secondly, all in favor of sending a letter to the Board of Supervisors stating that we see a recurring issue with lack of data, and in this case, it is impacting we believe it is impacting the feral cat program, because we're going to speak about that specifically, right?
Lack of data and transparency.
Lack of data and transparency, and in this case, with the feral cat program, has caused problems within the community.
It's a very specific way it manifests itself in this instance.
And then if they have any further questions, that sort of thing, or are we just leaving it as a blanket statement? Is that
Well, back to, I don't think there's an ask. I don't know of an ask. I think it's a heads up.
I think at this point.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
A little courtesy heads up to the Board of Supervisors.
Vote on that?
So all in favor of sending a letter to the Board of Supervisors that states what we just said, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm not so much opposed as I am, maybe it's after the July 30th meeting and get a summary of what's going on with that. I feel like that's a courtesy effort on our part too, and then July 30th is the trigger
So
for
let's,
sending the letter.
I'm sorry.
maybe we could send the letter the first week of August, so to give them a little wiggle room, and maybe we can, in our letter to ACC, say that we are going to be sending a letter to the Board of Supervisors, and we'd love some more information before we do that, and give them an actual.
Well, what if the July 30th meeting has some radical event happen that changes the statements that we make to the letter, but, well, then, okay, so then if that's the case, then why wait for the July 30th meeting?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
No, I kind of have two things. I guess the one issue is that it's not just about the feral cat issue, it's an overall transparency issue that, and data kind of transparency issue is what we're kind of getting at. The other thing is we're not going to find out about what happens at that meeting until our August.
Well, unless you ask for a response, a summary response, which you should ask for anyway, to the meeting and the outcome of the meeting.
If we get, I'm sorry, but if we
I
get
would
that,
ask-
we can't discuss it amongst ourselves. But the only,
True.
the only person, it's going to be up to them essentially to respond
Right.
for the commission,
Right.
which I don't necessarily feel comfortable with. Not that I don't trust them in that sense, but I think we should discuss it the same way we're discussing these things.
Yeah, let's just do the letter exactly how we've described it here.
And then we can certainly always follow up with other
Yeah.
comments or asks in the future.
Just send more information.
I might even say in the letter that we're expecting to present future information based on upcoming meetings.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely refer to that there as this
It'll be
meeting
on the
on the
agenda,
30th.
let's make sure that's clear.
All right, all in favor of sending a letter that will be drafted and along those lines? All in favor, aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No opposition, okay, that moves forward, thank you.
Commissioner Fortier, I have one more question.
Yes, go ahead,
Are we
please.
not responding to the SPCA's letter then?
Oh.
I said what I don't see a point. I see no point. Russell?
I'm confused. I thought by responding to the ACC letter that we had already voted to say we want clarification on their numbers.
We're responding to Animal Care and Control. We have not agreed to respond to the SPCA letter. I don't see a point, but I'm open to conversation.
I see no reason not to say that we also received response from the SPCA saying that it didn't seem satisfactory or whatever.
No, do we
but
send a
I don't think that we should necessarily respond specifically
To the SPCA.
We need to verify the organization.
Yeah. Right, so no letter to
And especially
SPCA.
our response to the ACC, as long as we alert them or refer to that we did receive an unsatisfactory, essentially, or questionable response, or however we want to term it, from the SPCA, we are responding essentially to
How about
the
we-
organization because they're working with each other.
How about we CC Dr. Scarlett,
That we can
and that covers it? Yes? Right, letter to ACC, CC SPCA, and a letter to the Board of Supervisors. Okay, all right, thank you all for your input on that important issue. With that, we're going to continue on to the revision of San Francisco's pet tethering ordinance, a discussion of the Logan tethering ordinance, and potential recommendation modifications. Nina, please.
Sure, so I think, again, this comes to the data issue. We're still waiting for data from ACC about the geographic locations and the calls that we've been talking about. And so at some point, I would like to try to hone in on that issue as far as, what is the actual issue, why it's happening. And so I think that's only possible if we dig into the data. Or another suggestion I had was, perhaps I could speak with an ACO to see, because they're on the ground, and to see do they think that any changes are necessary or not?
Can I get one?